I will, thank you. I'm sure you're.
Rachel. Here's, Rachel, now, you hear us? Thumbs up. There are. Rachel, can you hear us? Yes. Hear well? Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great.
The timeline is in your, if I recall it correctly. I did read the timeline. I did.
All right, we're good.
Yeah, okay, yeah, the timeline was in recording. All right, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We are about to begin. I need your attention. Thank you. David. Welcome to Housing, Health, and Human Services. I am Maria Ortiz. I am co-chair along with Joe Rascucha, co-chair with me. Yes, say. Our regular meetings, if you don't know, are the first Thursday of the month. Here we are today, June 26th. This is a special meeting. We are here to discuss NYCHA, Fulton, Elliot, Chelsea houses and the proposed project. Let's see. We have a hybrid meeting policy. So we are here currently together and we have members online. Yeah. And this is being live streamed. It will live on YouTube forever. We also have a hybrid meeting policy that you can find on our website. If you are a member and you are online, you need to keep your cameras on. You can find more about it online. Two updates that I want to share. For Housing, Health, and Human Services, we do have our meetings the first Thursday of the month. But for July, we're going to have our meeting instead on Tuesday, July 1st. That is this coming Tuesday. And also.
That is our regular monthly meeting for July.
Yes. Also, the town hall is being held July 9th. Right. Sorry? Yes. The Chelsea NYCHA Town Hall. Thank you. I thought everybody knew. Yes, but it is the Chelsea NYCHA Town Hall. It's being held July 9th at PS 33. It's going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. And it is an in-person event and you need to RSVP. It will be live streamed, but people cannot participate if they are online. In order to participate, you need to be in person.
But again, to note, RSVP, but you also, if you show up at the door, you will be let in, no problem. And just so these are announcements, okay? So the Chelsea NYCHA Town Hall is with all of our elected officials. They are coming to a meeting and we're working out the actual format. We've asked for questions to be sent from the public in advance. We've gotten some of those and we're working as how that works. The goal will be to ask questions of elected officials. First, there'll be a moderated portion of a panel. They'll be asked the same questions. And then after that, we'll open it up to the floor to ask questions. And it's going to be managed because we know there was a town hall with our assembly member and our Congress member a few weeks ago that was turned into chaos. We're not having chaos. We're trying to get our elected officials to respond and to engage to your questions and to the questions you submitted in advance. The other thing is to remember, PS 33 auditorium is like a theater seating, so it's not these loose seats. And that means we'll have to work with some assistants, crowd control folks who are coming to these meetings frequently. Those who want to speak necessarily outside, to make everything managed easier. Because we expect to have a good showing at that meeting. So again, just to say it again, July 9th, which is a Wednesday.
It is a Wednesday.
Wednesday at 6 p.m. at PS 33. And we have that space for at least 2.5 hours. I encourage everybody here, please tell your neighbors, please tell our various Chelsea residents to come to that meeting to discuss.
Thank you. And Mary, you had a question?
Yes,
About something that I just announced or Joe said? Yes.
I did write I've never been to
The answer right there on the corner.
It is on, yeah, the entrance is on 9th Avenue between 26th and 27th Street. Renee, is the question related to what we were discussing?
Yes, we have translators.
We will have
Yes.
translators in English, Spanish, Russian, Cantonese, and Mandarin.
Okay. What about sign language?
If it's requested.
If
If it's
it,
requested, we'll have it. The next thing is for tonight, right? So for tonight,
thank you.
we are having a discussion. First, the goal of this discussion is to come to a community position for Chelsea Nitro. I'll talk about that in a minute, but the format for tonight is that we will be presenting and talking about documents. You'll hear discussion among the committee members on those documents and that background information and position. And then, as the meeting progresses, we'll open it up to the floor and people can ask questions or make comments to the committee. Because this is being live streamed, you'll see an X in the middle of the floor. You must stand there to be able to be seen on the cameras. And this is also, this is not just the camera, it's a microphone. So please speak up because remember, people are watching online and they want to be able to hear what people are saying. Everyone clear about what we're doing tonight? Right.
Can we just, if committee members, can we just introduce ourselves, starting with Katie?
Hi, Katie Savage, member of the committee.
Kevin Collins, member of the committee.
Speak up, speak loudly, please.
Kevin Collins, member of the committee.
Couldn't hear the second person.
Pete Diaz, member of the committee.
Katie Stokes, member of the committee, but actually, hold on, Roberta. Are you a member of our committee?
No,
I-
July one.
They know, they
I'm
know.
running the meeting, allow me to do what I'm doing. I got both sides.
Roberta Barnett, member of the committee.
Joe Restuccia, co-chair.
Maria Ortiz, co-chair. Yes, thank you.
Leanne Buckley, member of the committee. Jesse Bodine, district manager.
Dolores Rubin.
And do we have any committee members online? Yes. Rachel?
Rachel Lee, committee member.
Oh, that's low. Did you guys hear that?
The fan is really loud.
You don't have a mic?
Yeah, we do. The problem is the air conditioners are competing with it. That's. No.
Turn it off.
All right, well, Rachel Lee is on the top left and JD
Jean Danielle, good evening.
on the bottom left. And we have two new members in the room that are joining us for the July 1st meeting. That is when they will begin participating, but can you introduce yourself, Charles?
Hi, Charles Montoya Archer, soon to be member of the committee.
Yes, and Brian?
Hi, Brian Son.
Thank you.
Also in the room, we have some other community board members to identify themselves, please.
David Aloka.
Chelsea Lane-Hughes.
Yes.
Kristen Berthe, Chair of Transportation Committee.
Paul Devlin, Chair of Post Kitchen Land Use and member of Chelsea Land.
David Warren on transportation and cases.
Thank
Oh,
you.
and we've got Pamela?
And a public member, yes.
Pamela Wolf, public member of Chelsea Land Use.
Did we get everyone? Okay.
So,
Wait, can I just ask, just,
oh yeah,
just really quickly, I'm curious, can you raise your hand if you live at Fulton? And can you raise your hand if you live at Elliot Chelsea? Okay. All right, thank you.
can you raise your hand if you come from a block association or organization in Chelsea? Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to get a sense of who's in the room. So we want to talk tonight in a different way that we started at our last meeting about how to proceed with this whole project. I want to note that, number one, this is a complex and multifaceted project. And the community has been talking and engaged back and forth with the various stakeholders, the related companies as developer, NYCHA as the public housing authority, Essence as one of the developers, all of our elected officials, the two tenant associations, Elliot Chelsea and Fulton Houses Tenant Association, and the block associations in the neighborhood and other community organizations in the neighborhood. And we have had a very tortured path on this project. And in our drop boxes, you can find, and our members should have it, we have a timeline. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I'm going to give you the high level point of the timeline. That it was in October 2018 that NYCHA released a draft proposal to demolish and then repair parts of Elliot, Chelsea, and Fulton. There was a huge response to this about demolition of buildings on 9th Avenue in Fulton. And as a response to that pushback, there was a working group formed at the request of then our council member, Speaker Corey Johnson, and the mayor. And this process started, and it was a very large, when I say a working group, a very large group. It was tenants from NYCHA, it was community organizations, it was housing professionals from across the city. The deputy mayor, Vicky Bean, sat on it. The head of the housing authority board sat on it. Very full, robust, high level. In that meeting, Jackie Lauer was the tenant representative. I was there. Our council member, our now council member, Eric Botcher, who was the chief of staff, was there. Anyone else who was in the working group? No. So the long, complicated process, and in the middle of it, COVID hit. So this big public process had to go virtual. Very difficult and very complex to do. Out of that working group discussion came something called the Chelsea Nitro Working Group Report in 2021. And it put forth, here are all the principles to redevelop. And in the case of the plan, you renovate the Chelsea Nitro campuses, both in Fulton and Elliot Chelsea. So that's how this started. Out of that plan, out of that working group report, Nitro released a request for proposals based upon that plan for the developers to respond to. They responded under a framework which is called RAD Pact, Rental Assistance Demonstration Program and Partners in Community Together. It is specifically to take NYCHA buildings to bring in private sector and to allow renovation and some new construction, depending upon the location, for NYCHA campuses to make sure they were in good repair and could live on for a long time. Why did they do that? There's a program at the federal government called Rental Assistance Demonstration. And what that does, it says if you take a series of public housing buildings and move them from getting subsidies from the public housing section of HUD called Section 9 to getting subsidies, rental subsidies from Section 8, you, the private developer, you, the housing authority, can allow there to be mortgages put on these properties. And the biggest issue here that started this whole process off is the federal government over decades has starved the Section 9 program of any effective subsidies or capital improvement money. So therefore, not just here, but across the nation, public housing was starved and fell into disrepair. However, this Section 8 program benefits the private sector. And everybody loves it on the private sector because in fact, they get better income, higher rents, and they make more money.
I would love it too.
Yeah, yes. So Section 8, the biggest consumer of Section 8 in the nation for rental subsidies just happens to be the related companies. We know them now as this large developer. They started back in the 1980s as an affordable housing developer who did Section 8 projects. So they're very, very adept on how to get Section 8. The key part of this program that we all learn is that this RAD program allows the developer to go to the federal government, to the housing department, and say, if the market rents in an area are higher, I'll do a study, a market study, to show you they're higher by some third-party company, and then they get those rents paid to them as contract rents, not the 30% that people pay in public housing, those contract rents. Well, think about it for a moment. The rents in our neighborhood in Chelsea are probably a little bit higher than what the public housing rents are. So that's the way there's more money that comes into a development. And that's the way a development can borrow a mortgage to do major renovation, repairs, or construction. So that takes you through this sort of simple a complicated process, but why we got to where we were. 3 bidders replied to this RFP, 3 different companies, large companies. And I want to note, and this is an important thing to note, that the city of New York, through NYCHA, has done the following. They have completed construction in this RAD program for 285 buildings with 9,517 apartments, for a total cost of $1,759,000,000. Under construction today, in this same program, they have 313 buildings in construction, with a total of 15,944 apartments, for a total of $5,556,000,000. This is a functioning, active program that is transforming NYCHA across the city, that has brought the public sector, private not-for-profits, and NYCHA together through a series of requests for proposals to do major renovation work across the entire city and every borough, Staten Island, the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, and Queens. In the planning phase, there are 172 buildings with 13,567 units. And that projected cost is $6,432,000,000. So and in that group is Chelsea NYCHA. So we're talking all in, the city is, through NYCHA, is renovating 770 buildings with 39,158 apartments for a total of $13,747,000,000. This is a major transformative effort across the city, of which we are a part. So let's note what part we are. Of that 13 billion, on NYCHA's numbers, not in the current numbers that the developers put forth, the Chelsea NYCHA campuses will take $927 million to renovate or replace for 16 buildings, 2,056 apartments. So I want to say again that we are not in isolation. There's a lot happening, but then let's talk about here and the unique quality of here and what's happened here. The RFP was was awarded in December 21. And the winning bidder, at the recommendation of the both tenant associations, was the related companies. And that happens sometimes, you don't expect.
Excuse me, they're having problems hearing.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Renee, I can always make my voice louder if I need to, right?
Keep doing it.
So the related companies got the RFP. And then I will say to you that the project went silent from December of 21 until the summer of 22. And there was a press conference which expressed that there was a new plan. And the plan would no longer be a preservation plan with new construction at various locations, but it would be a full demolition and replacement plan. And that's the first time this community board and the majority of us in this community learned about that. So that started a whole new process. Because in fact, the reason that there was this whole working group was the tenant's response not to demolish 2 buildings. And now our entire discussion shifted to everything would be demolished and new buildings would be built. But then the third component entered in for the first time. That is that the majority, that the public housing would be rebuilt on 40% of the land in both campuses. And 60% of the land would be available for new construction for mixed income housing. And in this case, it has been put forth right now, probably will change, as 80% market rate and 20% affordable. And the big change was, as articulated by the developers at that point in time, the costs for renovation had increased so much here that they needed more money, and the way to get more money was to build mixed income housing and use the proceeds from the mixed income housing to put back into this project to fill those gaps. Now, so that started a lot of discussion, and I'll give you one more item, and then we'll go, and then a flavor. So what is very, very interesting in this process. When this started, the Chelsea NYCHA Working Group, the cost of the renovation was $366 million for the buildings, approximately $178,000 to be spent average per apartment. When it came back and Related came in and did their own evaluation, that turned into $927 million or $450,000 to be spent overall per apartment. However, since then, we now have an additional cost. On October 28th, 24, related, NYCHA came and did a presentation about financing. The price is now 1.2 billion, which means the cost would be $583,000 an apartment. However, on February 26th of this year, they returned again and stated the price was now for replacement housing, 1.7 billion, which means this NYCHA replacement housing would cost $826,000 an apartment. So what I want to note here is that this has more than tripled here in a short period of time. But what's key to understand is that the average cost today for those new buildings and planning throughout the NYCHA portfolio, the 272 buildings with the 13,000 units, the average cost is $469,000 an apartment for renovation. So we are more than double. And that starts to, and the source of all these numbers is directly from the NYCHA website. And there's a PAC project, there's a NYCHA RAD PAC page. So every one of these numbers is the information from NYCHA itself. The ones I quoted as to the increasing cost are from NYCHA or from Related. So we have something in front of us. Along the way, when there were questions raised about how the change in this project happened, the community board was told, well, it was announced there'd be a survey. And the survey was conducted, and the majority of tenants in both campuses wanted the demolition and the replacement. It took the community board 8 months to get the results of that survey. And the survey was also characterized as a vote. In many public meetings, it was a vote.
Speak up.
John, can you hear?
Renee, can you hear?
I can hear you.
Okay,
It's
so,
online.
yeah, so in this process, the survey was characterized as a vote, then a survey, then a vote. What we learned in the end of the day, I think this is a key piece of information. And yes, yeah. When we finally got the survey results, we found that the eligible voters were 3,388. 969 people submitted a survey. That was 29%. And of those total households, I'm sorry, it's probably.
About approximately
Yeah, there you go.
550 voted in support of new construction.
Right.
Which is about 16% of the 3,388. I remember those numbers because it was remarkable to me.
And it was
We were
presented in this room.
told that it was 60% of the tenants that wanted it, right? And it's really about 60.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah.
It was 60.
There's 3,388 tenants who are over the age of 18 who could vote. And this is information that was presented by Related and SF.
In this
As
room.
their survey
Results.
outcome results, it is on the website. You can see the Related SF slide. And about approximately 550, I forgot the exact number, but that's about 16% of the total who are in for right, 16.
1-6.
1-6,
not
6,
Can I say something?
In a minute. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no, I just wanted to give those numbers.
Yeah. And again, we're not relying upon ideas or thoughts, we're relying upon information presented to this committee from NYCHA and Related. Yes, Mary.
Okay, we would like to, you told that when the survey that is. Okay, let me explain something real quick. After we took our survey, projects behind us were given the choice of a vote. So even though it was a survey, it's still considered as a vote. Okay, so we were told,
No.
okay, the survey.
Yeah, call us.
I'm sorry, I just want to ask the audience, when someone is speaking, can we please allow that one person to
And let them
speak?
finish and then we can talk back and forth.
Yeah,
Go
we're
ahead.
all gonna get a chance to speak. It's just really important to hear each other. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on here. But it is important for me and for these committee members to hear you all. Thank you.
When the survey was completed, we were told in Fulton that 600 votes came from up and Chelsea projects that they wanted demolition. And then 300 came from Fulton, and that totaled the 916 that went with forth to say that the demolition was gonna go ahead. That's what you.
Okay.
So just for clarity, the number who were in favor of demolition.
And that was option A.
Right, in Fulton, were 294 people. And in Elliot Chelsea, 256. So the total for people who wanted new construction was 550. And the total who wanted rehabilitation was 419. The problem is, this was a majority of a very small minority. That's how we've been trying to figure out what this is about. Yes, Mr. Andre.
We also made the point that the survey never used the word demolition.
Correct.
Was by any standard of survey developed. Chose to use language that hid the fact that the buildings were going to fall. And I think that's just a sort of point that everybody should know. That language is available and published all over.
So I just want to note that irrespective of all these things happening, our community and our community board continued to talk, engage, and try to figure out what was going on. And our community board made a request to meet with NYCHA and the developer to start getting serious, detailed information. That was our goal. Jesse, how long did it take us to get that very first meeting?
It took a while.
We're talking a number of months. And then, yes,
Okay, so, I went down the last point, but what I would like to say to the community here tonight is, well, I have a building, right? And I'm gonna say I'm gonna flatten it, and then I'm gonna take my tenants out and I'm gonna put them somewhere else, and they're gonna get a new building. So what do you call that? Do I just demolish? I flattened my building, what happened to it?
that's
I
called
took it
demolition.
down.
That's called demolition.
Demolition is right, so that's what's happening on 19th Street, is demolition. And then he's gonna rebuild.
So what happened is, as a community, we were trying to understand and engage the facts, the information. And we worked with the housing committee and the Chelsea Land Use Committee, getting information, talking, and working with developers. At the same time, because now the project was out there, different groups of tenants coalesced, got together, came to speak. Majority of tenants were just very concerned, trying to understand what's going on. Some were in favor, some were against. And then there was a very small number who were very disruptive, who stopped us, all of us, from proceeding in meetings. And that characterized part of our discussion. It was very hard to be in meetings where people would scream, yell, and be removed by police, right? Yes, Mary.
The other thing that should have been open to the board is that you should have been invited to go on the tours. And then you would have seen the difference of what he was saying, that he could build something similar and he'd give it to us. This is what we would, so that the board would be able to see what we saw.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, we're not, we're in the sort of like laying out where the hell we are, because,
But I'm not saying that.
no, I understand. Give us a moment, because the point of it is,
How long does meeting?
yes, this,
Only we're limited.
Salinas, this meeting is gonna go long.
I know, but.
So,
Question is the management of the.
yes, I,
Joe.
Yeah.
Just as a point of order, you just completed the section which gave us the background.
yes,
Right, so I think that, wouldn't it make sense for the committee to start having the discussion? Whether or not we're going to questions and answers, we've already, because right now, bringing other points of what happened.
no, there actually is more information that I'm not quite done with
Okay,
yet,
so let's
right?
complete that.
So, therefore, this project continues. We have a developer in place. We have NYCHA. And we begin to learn that our elected officials are in favor of the project. We don't understand exactly what, where, we're trying to understand that. And then we get into something called the Master Development Agreement. We learn, again by total chance, that the NYCHA board is considering this. And they're having discussions about it. And this is in 2024. And in fact, we go back and forth. And there's a presentation about what this master development agreement will be. And then it took us from June of 24 until January of 25 to get a copy of that master development agreement. And what I want to note for the public and the committee, we have been engaged in a almost I said this phrase before, a fog of war of information, where if we as a community had information given and presented earlier. The one thing I think we have a common agreement on, that the way this was handled is not the way anyone has seen a public development project handled. Neither for tenants, community members, the block associations, or community board. Usually things are brought to us, explained, discussed back and forth. We have public meetings about it. There was, and I'm gonna be very clear on characterizing this, an ongoing means and methods to hold back information. Right. So now we're moving along, and now we get to, what's coming, a draft environmental impact statement. Mary, hold on. Environmental impact statement, right? And in fact, in March of this year, this big environmental impact statement comes out. And we get it, there's positive information about it. We responded earlier on the scoping of that document. We asked for things to be studied, some were not. In March of 25, our community board writes a 34-page letter about this environmental impact statement. And it took us and we began to ask to have a town hall in March of this year with our elected officials. That is the town hall we just mentioned at the start of this meeting, July 9th. So here we are today. We've been admired in land use, how to do, what to do, how to proceed. We take a position. We have prior leadership who was not clear about wanting to take a position on this. Tonight, we start our discussions to try to take a position on this. And the first thing I want to say is our goal is to find some common ground. And then at the end of the discussion, there's going to be disagreements, but there is some common ground. So what I'm going to do now is distribute to the committee members a discussion document, simply that way. And then there'll be some for the audience, not that many, sorry. And I want to preface this by saying that we in the community board are all volunteers. You in the tenants, you volunteer, tenant associations. You block associations, you volunteer.
Is that on my document? I can share with JD and Ricky.
I am going to send that in a second. So what I want to note is that the related companies has had a full-time PR machine managing this process for a couple of years. In the first meeting I went to with Related about this, there were 4 people sitting in a corner, and they were in charge of public messaging. So whatever we today are dealing with, although people are very passionate, engaged, want to figure out what to do, we are the volunteers working against a huge organization who is creating what is called a narrative as to what this project is and how people are responding to it. So let's take some of the narrative pieces and just knock them about for a second. Narrative number 1, there are tenants who want nothing to happen. Narrative number 2, people want no change. Narrative number 3, there are $1 million homeowners in Chelsea who don't want shadows on their buildings and want nothing to happen. There are absolutely a small, tiny minority of tenants who are against this project that don't seem to understand the nature of it. This is the general word out there. The last piece, the most important. This is a done deal. This is happening. It's finished. There's no way to stop or change any of it. So all of these things are not something that are real. They're something that a public relations company has been working on and cranking on literally for 2 years, well paid, more than we would ever make. Now, I'm not saying that many things are not going to happen. They're going to happen here. There's going to be major change happen no matter what. Our community board does not stop development. Our community board is not against development. Our community board has the largest number of square feet built for residential and commercial development anywhere in the city of New York, and the largest number of housing units that have been built over the past 10 years. It's shocking. Am I wrong?
In Manhattan.
In Manhattan, sorry. In Manhattan, not Long Island City, in Manhattan, right? We're talking tens of thousands of apartments. So we are not, as characterized in many narratives, the anti-development community board. If you buy that, you never lived here. Yes.
I feel like I need to stand up. one thing that I want to know for everyone that I think is important, Joe didn't mention it, but, we had two TA presidents, a tenant association president at Fulton, Elliot, and we have one, Elliot Chelsea and one at Fulton. And I think it's important to know because I've spoken to members, spoken to people individually and found, many people on the committee are concerned and care about what the tenants want here. Some people say many of the tenants want it. Some people say many of the tenants don't want demolition and some do. What I think it's important to know that the TA president of Fulton did run on a platform of demolition happening at Fulton and being in favor of it. At Elliot Chelsea, and the TA president is here, Renee Kidd, she did not run on that platform, no demolition here. They each won, but by a few numbers. I think that that's relevant if you care about what the tenants want here. Okay, that's important to know. So I think when we have this discussion and we're talking about where can we come to consensus, or what are the things that we can all agree are best for the community and the tenants, we really need to start thinking about those things. I think we need to go into committee discussion and allowing us to have our discussion and then giving you all time to speak.
So what I want to note is that we spent almost 2 years speaking about financing, campuses, buildings, FAR, layout, site planning. I'd like us to reframe our discussion on something that I think all of us share, which is about people. And I was reminded of this by Renee Kitt from Elliot Chelsea at a meeting that I attended on a panel this week. And that Fulton and the Elliot Chelsea NYCHA campuses are a big part of the Chelsea neighborhood. That's like a fact, the plain old fact. They are communities of long-term residents with families and senior citizens with low, moderate, and middle-income residents. Everybody has got to understand that the residents of Elliot Chelsea are not the poorest of the poor across the board. There are people who have been here for 50 and 60 years. There are second, third, and fourth generation families. There are.
What was I, third generation here?
Yes.
Yes, I was third generation here. I lived across the street.
There are low-income people, there are moderate-income people, and there are middle-income people. There are people paying the top rent, which is called the flat rent, right? Because their income, they're not paying 30% of their income, that would be even more. They're capped. And one of the rights that was negotiated as part of the Chelsea Working Group was to make sure the flat rent continued, and we never penalize people for doing better. Because God bless people who can, over time, educate themselves, have families, and do better, right? And the Chelsea NYCHA campuses and the people here are integral to Chelsea's history as a mixed income and working and middle class community, just like Penn South. These campuses are not development sites first. They are people's homes.
Yes.
And what is so disturbing, and it took, even though I said this and articulated it, Renee Kitt sort of called me on it a couple of days ago. I'm sorry. These are people's homes. And I believe that there's a broad impression in our community that every single building is collapsing, falling apart, is in horrible condition. The bottom line is, it's a varying degree of things. I can say flat out, and I will cite the source, that the buildings are structurally sound on each campus. Because that is in the report from NYCHA to the developer, right? Now, I want to say something else. It does not mean that there cannot be a political choice made after a lot of discussion to demolish or change certain buildings. That's a political choice, but it is a false narrative choice to say these buildings are falling down tomorrow because they physically are not. At the era they were built between 1947 and 1965, the construction was very heavy, it's fireproof, it's concrete block, and that's just a fact, right? So let's start out, that's a value that I think we hold as a community. And I want to just discuss that briefly first among the committee members. If this is a value thing that hopefully should inform us as we proceed on everything underneath it. So let's go around the room and talk about this very first bullet, which is that they're a good part of the neighborhood, integral part of Chelsea's history as a working class community. Starting with Dolores.
What you laid out is a fact. These buildings are part of the structure of this neighborhood. They do represent more than just NYCHA. They represent what Chelsea is.
Well, you know,
And I think the key point that you brought up was the fact that there's a different opinion that we can broadly or we can characterize from the comments made over the last few years of how folks in these set of campuses here, Chelsea, Elliot, feel versus those down in Fulton. And I think that one of the things, if we come out to a consensus, is that perhaps what makes sense is that for those that feel that they are strongly opposed to demolition, their buildings are sound, and they want to keep this intact, that we focus on renovation for these sets of campuses. And if that is different for those down in Fulton, we focus on demolition if that's what they are focused on. So I think that's the key of what I heard from you, is that we have two different sets of campuses that have two very different focuses. So there is nothing wrong with emulating that point of view and amplifying it and saying we have two different outcomes. And that is our position.
Liv. It's just on the first point.
Just on the first bullet.
It's the first point.
Oh, this section, I was telling you, I was wondering.
No. This first thing about that they're part of the Chelsea neighborhood and the people just comment.
Yeah, that's unequivocally true. I, grew up in this neighborhood and went to high school across the street.
Gotta say.
Yeah, no, this point is true. They're a huge part of the neighborhood. Growing up in the district, going to high school across the street, we know the importance of these campuses and the people who live in them, and these people deserve good homes and stability, and for this process to
Yes, even these.
to be resolved.
Katie,
I agree with Dolores, from what I've heard throughout all of these meetings. It's very clear to me that there's no reason the two campuses should be linked in one project. They're not contiguous, they're two separate locations. And to try and force one vision on both of them when the tenants seem to have different views is unacceptable.
Pete,
I pretty much feel the very same point, as a youth, in years back. I used to come to Chelsea. Play together.
you gotta speak louder, Pete, otherwise you
Fulton houses and play basketball. As a team. So I know the area very, very well. What I'm seeing here is we have two campuses. And the fact that the Fulton houses feel one way about their campus. And the Chelsea Elliot campus feels totally different. Makes me think that I should handle these two campuses differently in terms of what they do.
Point of information,
What?
point of information.
Yes.
Are we basing these kinds of comments and observations based on the votes? Or
No,
based
no.
on the survey?
We're getting neither. We're just getting general impressions about the nature of these campuses and how they are part of the neighborhood. There's further down in the document, there's a question about a vote that we're gonna talk about.
It's just that the way that is presented, which I appreciated, is based, it gives me the impression as an audience member that you have gotten the actual saying from the members of Fulton as a given. And I am trying to find out if it is based on a vote that Fulton took
It's,
or just on a.
Based on many, many
Based on-
meetings that we had, many, many
I will say
years.
basically, this is just
So,
sort of anecdotally
Uh-huh.
hearing more people from Fulton in favor of that demo and much less. And by the way, and I'm not gonna say that that's and I'm gonna say again, that is not hard and fast
Okay.
whatsoever. And in fact, later in this document, we're gonna discuss the need for a new vote,
Good.
okay? Kevin.
No more points of information, please. Let's just get through
Yeah.
this section.
I agree that the people, the families.
hard time hearing.
I
I know, I'm sorry.
Maybe you can send
Don't have any.
agree that the people and families who live, who have grown up, who are here now, the generations that have been there in Fulton, Elliot, Chelsea are a vital part of this neighborhood, of the fabric of the community. They deserve the best possible living arrangements, and we should also be, trying to fight for the most protections we can get for the folks there.
Right, so let me ask you to address this issue, that one of the key issues we keep missing is that we're talking about people's homes. We keep hearing this presented as development sites, and I'm very concerned, we have to inform how we talk about people's homes. Because I'd like to say, for those of us who live in Hell's Kitchen, if anyone came and said, the preservation area of the Clinton Special Zoning District, which has all kinds of restrictions, is a development site, people would go apeshit. If anybody came and said the Chelsea Historic District is a development site, people would go apeshit. So what distinguishes Chelsea NYCHA from those categories of types of buildings and people? And that's the thing I'm concerned with. Our community board, by being deeply involved in the technical parts of things, has started to lose the idea that there's values here. So I just put it out in the ether, people think about it. Katie, you're up next.
Yeah, I just have such respect. I mean, look, people have been caring about this and putting time and energy for more than 10 years since we heard about the history, right? There are people on the campuses, some who've been more involved at different times, and it's just important that we recognize so many people have put so much time and energy into this. We want to make sure that everybody feels heard, and that frankly, all of the efforts that have gotten us to where we are today are respected, and that we, you know, we're not pretending like we're starting from scratch here,
Right,
Like,
not at all.
we really are, just admiring the fact that frankly, I think we always start our meetings about recognizing that everybody's coming with good intentions, right? And I think that that's why we're here, and I hope that we're gonna talk about next steps.
Yes.
I mean, the Fulton and Elliot Chelsea developments are an integral part of the Chelsea community.
I'm just gonna ask committee members if you're going to speak to please use your outside voice. And you're also allowed to stand up. If your voice projects better.
Speak from your diaphragm.
Try. So just to reiterate that these, all the residents who are within these developments are integral parts of the Chelsea community. It is very clear that this has been a very messy process in which residents have genuinely dissenting and divided views. Ultimately, it is in many ways the mission of the board, or should be the mission of the board, to uplift the voices of those tenants, to ensure that the rights and stability of those tenants are protected for the community, but then also to ensure that these campuses and the people who live in them and their descendants are able to stay here for the long haul. And that what that ultimately looks like, I'm not absolutely clear on, but that is and should be an important part of the discussion here.
We're gonna go to online. Rachel.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing I agree very strongly is Joe's description early on that this has been a fog of war of information.
Yeah.
As someone that is not on NYCHA, but that has been sitting on this committee, hearing about NYCHA for this long, there has been way too many information and also conflicting ones and accurate ones. So as Maria clarified early on, the statistics presented by the developer has not always been the most accurate, or at this point, even the most up-to-date version. So as part of our job on CB4 it's to represent the community's voice zealously, but also accurately. And if there's one key role that I would like for us to play at this particular juncture on this issue is to help provide some clarity and communicate the latest and greatest sentiments of our residents amidst the fog of war of information. And therefore, as part of our discussion points that Joe shared with the community members, committee members, I'm particularly keen on seeing the new vote to be taken on each campus hosted by a neutral third party.
EAD.
Yeah, I just want to throw one thing into the conversation. And one thing I think we should keep in mind, this is not just about buildings. This is about a community of people that have grown up together for generations. Fulton House, Elliot, Chelsea, it's a community. And there are many historic examples when the state or the city jumps in allegedly to improve people's lives, and they disrupt a community that's intact. And we need to be fully aware of that. This is a community, and that we're talking about disrupting it. What happens to that community these people have created? They have created a community, and we need to keep that in mind and not lose what they have created. I'm not expressing myself well, but I just want us to understand that it's more than just the physical buildings. It's a community of people.
Now, I wanted to note that in this discussion document, I tried to bring us from things that are we can all agree to, and leave the more difficult things to the end. Because part of this is, we normally as a community compromise. So the next section that we're going to talk about in this document, you can hear about this, is about community facilities. Because I believe most of us in the community really understand, as anything happening here in Chelsea NYCHA, we want to protect and expand community facilities. So the first one is Hudson Guild. And as a point discussion, as was put in the Chelsea NYCHA working group plan, build a new Hudson Guild first. And the reason for that is you want to build that building and have those services move from the old location to the new location on the campus, so there was no interruption of services. I cannot understate how people have told us over decades how Hudson Guild as a settlement house has affected their lives, provided social services, after-school services, senior services, psychiatric services, you name it. And the idea that under this current plan, Hudson Guild will be moved off campus for a good period of time and come back doesn't make sense, because it's not what was agreed to in these plans. So that's one item for community facilities. The next one is, this has come up very recently, to build a new and expanded PS33. Now, I want to say to you that I have mentioned this to the committee before. I personally lived through the building of Gotham West as part of one of the head negotiators in that. And we believed, with full good intention, that the school could stay in place while it was built around. And midway through, we had emergency PTA meetings where the school parents said, we must move the kids out of here. They cannot physically function. It is too noisy with construction or renovation happening around them. And we did a miracle, because our council member was speaker, Councilmember Quinn, and we got 314 students moved in the middle of the school year to an entirely different campus and set up busing. But guess what? Those kids had a real school year, as opposed to not being able to hear or focus or concentrate. So no matter what happens here, we have an opportunity. There's going to be thousands of apartments renovated. There's going to be maybe more new thousands coming in. Here's an opportunity. And why? Because PS33 was built as part of the urban renewal area of Chelsea that demolished all these blocks and built Elliot Chelsea houses, the addition, and the senior building. In the same action, right? So putting forth there, build a new and expanded PS33. Yes.
Was there a separate questions, or should?
I want to go through the whole list and then come back in. Next one is provide new on-site healthcare. There was always talked about a new healthcare facility. However, in little bits and pieces, we understand that Related may want to bring a for-profit entity in to do healthcare. The answer is a new not-for-profit healthcare facility run by a not-for-profit institution established, which accepts Medicaid and Medicare. Because many people in these campuses are on those two programs. The next one is, and if Miguel Acevedo were here, he'd run up a flag and he'd wave it. Provide a new youth recreational space on the Fulton campus. For the past 30 years, the Fulton tenants have asked for recreational space for youth on the Fulton campus, not just here at Elliot Chelsea. We have to provide that because the youth need a place to go in order to manage all the social service issues. And then there should be community rooms and tenant association spaces in each campus. So now let's take that from the top and go down, and anyone you want to comment on, we'll take, starting with Kate, you asked first.
Well, I have a question about 1 and 2.
You're referring to by the items.
So about you say that we should build Hudson Guild first. On site. And not have people go off site for a while until it's built. But separately, you say we should move the school off site because it's too loud and really disruptive. I totally understand that. But I guess I wonder, I think it would depend a little bit, like. I think it could be incredibly loud and disruptive for Hudson Guild to be in the middle of a construction site for the next however many years, 10 years. I guess it depends a little bit on, is there some space, whatever, 2 blocks away or somewhere very nearby? I think that could be nicer than being moved into a building in the middle of a construction site and trying to have all of their amazing services.
So 2 things I want to know. One is Hudson Guild has had a very difficult time in this whole process because they are a tenant of NYCHA and they have exceptionally constrained as to what they can and can't say and negotiate. And they have, I will tell you flat out, they have felt extremely pressed on this. And they have also tried to remain neutral among all the tenant factions here, right? So they are not in a position to be tough negotiators for themselves because they're literally a tenant that's going to get affected. I know for a fact, having worked in the working group process with the Guild, and Ken Jocker was a member of that, they absolutely wanted to have a new facility constructed here because the plan at that point was renovation. And I want to note again, we talked about these 2 campuses being different. That's the issue with that. It's the degree of disruption. You are right to bring this up. You should note that as a sort of caveat or thought on how to manage that.
Yeah, and
Right.
again, I mean, I think we all agree that they need, we need a new Hudson Guild. It's just a question of, is the new Hudson Guild gonna be in the middle of this huge construction site?
If it's a construction site.
If it's, right, but I guess it seems to me that we're suggesting very different approaches to the school and Hudson Guild, and maybe we should come up with a consistent approach.
Okay.
And say for both of them, let's not be subjecting people to all of the dust and everything else and the noise. If there are places nearby where they could go for a little while.
So I think,
Joe,
yes.
on the back of Katie's comments, just the suggestion, perhaps not being as prescriptive, but saying we solve for Hudson Guild. Recognizing that they want to have this, and this, which you just know, they want to have a new building. And for the school saying, in our experience,
That's right.
we recognize that this was disruptive for learning.
Yeah.
And our recommendation is X, however, solve for that. Instead of being prescriptive and
Got it.
telling them to do it, we're saying, we have experience, these are the things that Hudson Guild want. And then putting that in there and saying, find the solution for that.
Because that makes a lot of sense because the school issue that I learned, Katie, is that we went in there, everybody, PTA, community board, developer, with best intentions, and it turned out to be the bad choice, right? And the thing is, the school, you could move in its entirety as a community with the buses and everything. The Guild is a very different thing because there's so many different users of the Guild. It's not a school committee that picks up and relocates. There's the seniors, there's the folks who come from the mental health clinic.
So maybe we should, maybe we can say like, if whatever, if it's 3 blocks away or something. And now we have to have shuttles that go on an hour.
There you go. Yeah.
Right, like there are ways. So anyway,
I
and
agree.
the other thing I would say, we heard at an ACES meeting. That the DOE is actually saying, apparently based on their analysis, somebody did. The DOE is projecting that there will be 25% fewer students in schools in New York City, like in the next 10 years. Because they're projecting, because of the cost of living everywhere, that families with young kids can't afford it and they're moving out. So anyway, I actually think one thing that we need to be prepared for is the DOE saying, oh, you don't need more space because you're not gonna have that many more kids.
Yes.
And we really have to make the argument that just doesn't make sense. If you're planning on there being
So much housing.
so much housing, then we have got to, but anyway, I think we have to really be prepared for a very specific argument that they've already made recently, that they predict that we don't need more schools.
So it's fascinating, because in Hudson Yards and the Old Gotham West project with PS 51, they made the exact same argument. And midway through, they said, oh, we need to double the number of school seats. I literally lived through this negotiation where they were like, we do not need more school seats here. And then they came back and said, we'd like to make it from 300 to like 600. It was the most amazing thing. And they did it in the middle of the whole public discussion.
So I think we agree, we should
Right.
be advocating for it, not be as prescriptive, but allowing for us to still provide our guidance on our experience,
Right.
as well as the voice for Hudson Guild who cannot speak for themselves in these negotiations.
Excellent.
Okay.
Let's go to committee members. Committee members first, David, I'm coming back. Committee members first, though. Yes, Kate, thoughts on these first, bullets about community facilities?
I mean, I think it makes sense.
Members, just remember to speak up, stand up if you need to. Use your outside voice.
All right, Maria. You know,
I got that.
as we've seen with Hudson Yards and even Atlantic Yards in Brooklyn, the money makers are generally built first versus the things that are necessary for the community. So definitely making sure things that residents who will be living through this construction, whether they're located to different buildings temporarily, need to have as much support on site as possible, because it's not the developers who are gonna be living through a construction site, it's the residents.
Pete, speak up.
There's a lot of stuff that's going on here. In regards to the children and the schools, I think that the seats or the school should be located outside. And that the Hudson Guild, I think we should make accommodations for them in terms of making sure that it's still available during construction. That's all I can say at this point, this time, because it's not enough information.
Okay, Kevin?
I would have some questions on how you envision the healthcare on-site facilities. In other words, who might we be talking about? Health and hospitals, a federally qualified health center, or an academic medical center?
I think it's great to make, like, literally further qualified suggestions like that. Like, for example, for example.
Then what services, what do the tenants need, the population that currently exists versus what may exist down the road? Are we talking about clinics or a hospital? Are we talking about primary care, peds, geriatrics, dental?
I would say most discussions have been primary care.
But the tenants may need X, which we haven't
Right.
anticipated. Tenants, there may be more of a need for pediatric services or geriatric services. So we should kind of do
We
some
should
sort of
make a list.
analysis of what the tenants needs are.
How about if you're right, we say that's a requirement for this. Robert.
Just to piggyback off of, Kevin, it would not only be helpful to assess tenant need, but tenant need in the context of the surrounding community. So there are certain facilities that are available in the larger, Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen community. How can we supplement those in a way, that's helpful
Supplement
to
extended
tenants?
comp.
Exactly. And I don't know if this was discussed in the 2019 working group plan at all. If it was, it would be useful to revisit that, but would certainly support the idea of some form of an assessment, and would also support the idea of, centering these community facilities first before any housing that is non-NYCHA
Correct.
tenant.
Lynn.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Berta said, and also that Dolores said about the school facilities, so.
Laura?
I've already spoken.
Oh, sorry.
And-
Rachel?
I'm just gonna make a suggestion.
I know, you don't want anybody to talk, but I have to do it.
No, what I'm saying is that if we generally agree that these points
Oh,
make
just to
sense,
say I agree.
because what we're doing is we're litigating these specifics that we're not at specifics. We're trying to get to a position, right?
But
So
what's good though is that we're also teasing out elements that help bring consensus to this. And I really appreciate that. The qualifications get people in the same boat. Guys, it helps us. We're gonna go online to Rachel and then JD.
Agree with what's been said so far.
JD?
Yeah, I agree, except we need to keep in mind what I've heard is construction would take 14 years. So let's keep that in mind.
Okay, so let's move on to another item, right? This is a key thing. Temporary relocation plan and process, right? And I want to preface this by saying the following thing. Regardless of whatever proposal is finally agreed to and approved, whether it's renovation, demolition, replacement or development, some combination of those options, developers must produce in advance and make sure that this is a big bold thing. Protecting tenant rights for all Chelsea NYCHA households is the critical part of any plan. Can I get a nod on that? That it's a critical part of any plan?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Now, in any kind of development project, here's what happens normally. There's a written proposed temporary relocation plan that details the list of apartments available, including the exact apartments and numbers of bedrooms. That there's a written proposed temporary relocation agreement. Even if you are just coming out of your house for 2 months to have some work done and going right back to your same apartment, you should have a relocation agreement that ensures all the tenant rights under Section 9. And if any of this is the Section 8 RAD, then it's the enhanced Section 8 rights that we all work so hard to get on the Chelsea Working Group. And then the last thing is, any agreement has to be modified after negotiation with legal counsel of both the tenant associations and with the Legal Aid Society, who's in this as part of NYCHA representing tenant associations. So the 3 pillars are a list of where these apartments are and the size of the bedrooms, a written relocation agreement that is very specific, that protects the rights of every tenant. And then the third thing is that you have to have negotiation with the tenant's legal counsel. People feel that we can agree on that in general.
Can I just,
Yes, as an attorney or as a Katie?
yeah, as an attorney,
Okay.
but as a Katie too, but, the way this is written, I think is
Forget about the,
confusing.
forget about the waste. Let's talk about the.
Okay, like literally, I think what we should say is sort of combining maybe 2 and 3 or something, but you should have an agreement that is negotiated by the tenants association and their lawyers.
Right.
And,
Legally.
you know, as legal aid and NYCHA and the, you know what I mean, like. There shouldn't be an agreement, an agreement that comes from whatever the developers. And then an agreement that any such thing can be modified by other lawyers. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, let me just try to rephrase this.
Yeah.
The idea. Normally, the development project, the developer proposes an agreement to the other side, in this case, tenants, and then they negotiate something to come to an agreement. So let's
Yeah.
word it better.
Yeah.
The idea is that normally the developer has a document.
Right, proposes the draft.
The
and
draft,
Everybody
right,
negotiates.
So,
Yeah,
so
so
there's-
it's all one
yeah,
thing.
gotcha, same page, good.
Okay.
Anyone, are we in assent on this?
Yeah.
Yes, general, like,
Yes, and I think
it's
all a suggestion, idea, not.
yes, of course. No, this is about like, no, this is about like, it doesn't matter which way you go here. There have to be agreements that protect people's rights. And the problem is, NYCHA and the relator are having meetings without any agreements and any discussion so far. This is making me nuts. I've never seen anybody work like this. Please trust me, move, and then we'll do an agreement and you'll see.
The Hudson Guild with the check renovate. Why are you knocking it down? Spend millions of dollars on a renovation.
That's
Sorry. Okay, so again, David, we'll come back to it. We're trying to get the broad pictures here, broad picture. Now. Yeah.
You know, when I do my.
They're gonna be here all night.
All right, okay. I'll come back to you more in a second. Sorry, do you want to hear? Right, okay, yes. So with the committee, and I see some of our own members from the board, like Nancy. But Nancy is like the nature of the beast because it's a complicated, painful thing. And we talked about this already. We should accept the need to develop a separate plan for each NYCHA campus. That the campuses and the residents have different positions. Fulton is in favor, more people in Fulton are in favor, and the TA is in favor of demolition. Elliot, Chelsea, not. And we're gonna ask NYCHA, Related Essence, and our West Side electeds to acknowledge that fact. It's just a fact. Yes,
Could we say to accept the possibility of developing different plans, not the,
I want to acknowledge that not everybody's in agreement. Simple as that. They're not. Yes. Correct.
I mean, the nature of the disagreement is it appears to be somewhat marginal, which is not to.
Hey, I want to stop you right there. That is part of the related narrative. It is not somewhat marginal.
She made a point.
No, I know, but this is.
But your numbers, the numbers that you have provided here, as well as the TA elections indicate that there's genuine support and dissent on both sides. And trying to, you know, like sweep that under the rug is not.
I'm not gonna sweep, I'm gonna actually,
But, so there may be the possibility that this moves forward with two separate plans. And the board should embrace that if that is ultimately where we land. If that is not where the tenants ultimately land, I mean, I don't think there has to be two separate plans. That
So
is,
that means that the next bullet point is probably
we can move
the
the
one
next,
that is most relevant.
yes, we can move the next bullet point first.
If you have the letter, the next bullet point says, hold a vote on each campus, conducted and monitored by a third-party news organization.
Yes.
And you can read the rest.
To arrive at consensus on how to proceed. Now, I think the thing that I want to say that, Liam, I understand your response. I apologize for interrupting. I do it all the time. I know this. But I want to note, what I hear over and over is, there's only a tiny margin of people who do not want this plan to happen. Well, we had a council vote this week, right? And maybe you don't know, but 56% of the Fulton campus voted for the other candidate who ran on a platform of no demolition. 60%, and then 58% in Elliot Chelsea voted for that candidate. And that's in a real vote, where you go in a voting booth and you say, I am voting for this person, right? So all I want to say here is that if we had had a real vote to begin with, we would have moved this process along a hell of a lot faster, because it's okay for people to disagree on different approaches. And it annoys me that I was in a meeting with elected officials just yesterday where they talked about the small number of people, and the phrase was, who don't seem to be getting educated why this plan is good for them.
Wow.
That's pretty tough to hear. And that means that there's a whole process out there that is a PR thing, as opposed to you and I would wrestle with to have the people together. Kate.
I think, I just wanna note that inherently,
Louder.
it is already there's
Physically.
two different places, there are two different plans. They're just for some reason linked together, and I'm not sure why. I mean, they are two different campuses, so why are they being pushed together forward? So they are already two separate plans and should be treated. It's not that we're asking them to make two separate plans, they physically have a plan for Fulton, a plan for Elliot Chelsea, they're already two separate plans.
I think we also need to recognize that part of what has created some of the problem of moving the project forward is because we have the varying points of view.
Yep.
Opening it up to the first point, not the one we just moved to about the vote, the first point about opening up the possibility of allowing for the development or the renovation to be by specific campus.
Like Divergent.
And not having it be one project because one developer won the RFP. Recognizing there are different concerns, different issues, different problems on the campus. Let's solve for the specific problems as much as possible by separating out instead of lumping them together. So I think that's what you were writing there.
Yes.
And
You're written
for your
better.
next bullet point, having the vote from a third party that is that monitors and administers a vote to each campus will give us a better insight into recognizing whether or not we are moving in two different directions.
Yes. And I also noted in that section about the vote, that all parties must agree in advance to abide by the results of that vote. If there's a vote, you gotta live with it. Period. Kate.
Can I just ask a clarifying question of something Dolores just said? Dolores, you mentioned, you said something about the developer. You said, that because there's one developer, are you suggesting that you think that this vote should be about whether there should be a different developer?
No, not at all.
Okay, I
I'm
just wanted to clarify.
I'm saying that because of the fact that one developer won the RFP and the RFP went out for both campuses, we've now lumped all the decisions as
Right, well,
they have to be tied together. I'm not.
But again, respect to the working group who, they're the ones who put the both campuses together and put the RFP out as one. So,
Yeah, but sorry, hold on. Respect to the working group had a full preservation plan.
But the difference is the RFP specified something very different. What we are now contemplating has absolutely nothing to do with the RFP that came out. it was a total change in terms of what the recommendation was versus what the project at hand is now. So again, I understand you're trying to clarify that I was not suggesting of another one. But I don't think that we should be trying to say that, the RFP that was responded to is what we're talking about today.
And also something else I want to note for the record, Related has this RFP, I think we should support Related keeps. In other words, yes, this is important. A process has happened, folks. Whether you like them or not, they were awarded something. They have been snakes in many ways. I agree with you, Renee, right? However, they can choose to proceed or not, but they are the ones who were awarded this, right? And the issue that everyone's gonna get very concerned about, and our elected officials throw in our faces all the time, you don't wanna go back to square one, right? I think you figure out a way to take the process that has been horribly flawed and make it work in the community's benefit by engaging and figuring out how to get the outcome that the community wants, right? Don't fight the battles that just then play into the hands of folks who say, it's the naysayers. They don't want to do anything. They want to sit there. Now, let's come back to the folks online. JD, any thoughts on this specific thing about the separate plan for each campus and holding a vote?
I cannot be comfortable with alternate plans without knowing.
No, a separate plan, meaning whatever the possibility of a certain version of a plan for Elliot Chelsea versus a different plan that may come out for Fulton, depending upon what the tenant groups want.
Again, I cannot be comfortable with that at this point because I don't know exactly what all the tenants want. Secondly, the most important thing are the tenants, but there's also two other factors. One is Greater Chelsea. We need to weigh that in. It's not as important as the tenants, but it is a concern. And the third thing is public policy. What is going on here? We're giving away public land to private development. We need that's part of the process. And so I cannot say, take one campus and do that and the other campus. And again, I go back to the point, this is a community. Both campuses make a community. If you're going to demolish one half of that community, how do you reconstruct that community? What are going to be the effects on the larger community of people there? I don't think that's been thought through. I don't know what the answer is, but we need to consider not only the homes, but the community these people have made over generations.
But can I again note, we're not talking about prescribing this plan, that plan, this whatever. We're talking about that whatever happens, there are separate paths for each campus. And however, we can word that better because it may not be the same.
But they may also be parallel, there's no way to know.
Don't know.
Leaving the possibility there.
Trying to get self-determination to each group separately. Rachel?
As mentioned earlier, and as echoed by many of the committee members, I think the vote will help inform us and help us make the right decision as that reflects the voice of the residents and the communities.
Thank you. Now let's go, the next item is new housing on Chelsea and NYCHA campuses. I want to note for the record that this entire process we entered into was about the preservation and the making better the homes of the Chelsea NYCHA tenants. And in the middle of it, entered a whole new factor that this is not about our first value, which is that these are people's homes. This is part of our Chelsea community. Now these are sites. So the concentration of the public housing onto 40% of the land creates an opportunity to build new housing, both market rate and affordable. It was never part of the plan. It was about doing infill to the degree that was possible to build additional buildings to create financial contributions to get the Chelsea NYCHA buildings renovated. So now we have a plan that has new housing on. Here are the following things that we put forth as values. That new housing should be built first and foremost to support the budget needs to renovate or construct new Chelsea NYCHA, not to meet the budget needs of the NYCHA citywide. Because what we've learned is that this is now a commodity. That's how it's being discussed. The mayor has been quoted by saying this.
Yeah.
Vice President for Development what's that related, of NYCHA, John Pugavaya, has said this is a way to make money for NYCHA. This is basically, in a simple understanding terms, a piggy bank for NYCHA to create funds from Chelsea NYCHA land. So again, the statement is only to the degree needed to support Chelsea NYCHA. The second thing is any new housing, as per the working group plan, should be at least 50% affordable, not market rate. And any new housing should respect the scope and scale of the Chelsea NYCHA campuses and the surrounding neighborhood. And those are wildly divergent, period. But the current plan has pretty much one note, and that is 35 to 40-story towers at most locations, some places 25 or 26-story towers. And I think we all know, having worked in this board for a long time, that you can get both without having height necessarily. So the three tenets are to complete. Any new housing should be to support the budget needs of Chelsea NYCHA, not citywide budget needs. They should be predominantly affordable housing, at least 50%. In the working groups that a mixture of affordability. And the last thing is, must respect the scope and scale of the Chelsea NYCHA campus and the surrounding neighborhood. Thoughts? Katie, take it away.
I wonder if we could revise or replace the first
Why
point.
don't you propose?
So the first point right now says new housing should be built first and foremost to support any budget needs to renovate its NYCHA housing, right? Not to meet the budget needs of any NYCHA citywide. I propose that we write more simply, any profit from the building that happens should stay on the NYCHA campuses and not go to citywide NYCHA. Just that clearly.
Yeah, I like this. The point of it is, this document has to be like the super communication document, not the
Right.
details. So that's what we've been lost in details.
But I worry that the way it's currently worded might be some
100%,
other
got it.
issues, so if we can just be very clear, any
And we're
profit
taking notes.
from any building that happens should stay in the, you know.
And
on
to
the
meet
NYCHA
and to
campuses.
meet the needs of these campuses, period.
And the surrounding community.
Well, see,
Yeah.
see, you gotta look at the slippery slope there, because what happens is, then our elected officials get very excited.
Yes.
They're gonna take some profit from here, move it someplace else, and what I've learned is, when you create a housing fund, it very rarely gets to where it's going.
But the money from that SCC will stay for MEC.
That's right, that's different.
Stay there.
When you constrain it like that, then it's gonna,
Any other thoughts?
any other thoughts on this one?
Joe, I would add,
Oops,
I'm not seeing here integration, that the.
yes,
Tenants be integrated and that the tenants have access, full use and access to all service.
yes, that any buildings on the campus be fully integrated, there's no question, between NYCHA and any other market rate or, affordable housing, yes. Thoughts? Honestly,
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, and I don't think we're gonna find agreement on this on my end or whatever, but I would just disagree with where the profit goes piece. I think that the entirety of NYCHA campuses need serious help, and an opportunity to help them is rare and important, and we need to find funding where we can. And the idea that we would like pigeonhole where NYCHA gets to use the money to our district, or that we would even have that, the ability to ask for that concession, I think.
so because you start with the idea then that the NYCHA campuses are a city asset and commodity. And I want to say that from our community, I don't think we have a cent on that at all. These are we started out with saying the values are a neighborhood, a location, people. They're not a commodity. Renee has said from Elliot Chelsea multiple times in varying ways, full of anger, straightforward, whatever. It's not, you're not going to make money off us, right? I think, Liam, the problem here is there's an argument out there that public land is a commodity to be used for around the city. When you go down that slope, every single NYCHA campus that's adjacent to high value land is going to become a resource for the city. And in my personal experience, when you start doing that, you start having things happen that it's not about the people or the housing or solving the social problem. It's about dollars that are used for other purposes. Battery Park City was used for housing, and the Battery Park City Fund was used for so many things all of a sudden, because there was a pot of money that sat there. So I'm just saying that, think about that.
And I would really disagree with that happening. But I'm not saying that that money goes to the big coffers that City Hall then divvies around. I don't have a problem with it going back to NYCHA and being used in the repair backlog and in the betterment of the campuses all across our city where tens and hundreds of thousands of people have to.
So we're not gonna debate this much further. Yeah, what I wanna note that as a Hudson Yards, we had a $45 million affordable housing fund that was earmarked to be used in Manhattan Community Board 4. Not $1 of that money was spent in Manhattan Community Board 4. And that was a commitment. And unfortunately, the way the city government works, this is very good in abstract, but in a functionality, once there's a pot of money, it's gonna go in places that elected officials or city officials want it to go. So I just take that as a caution. So I'm just getting the sense that on this one, with the exception of our one member, we're kind of in agreement. Yes.
I mean, I do understand where Liam is coming from. There are some real open questions about what the future of Section 8 and Section 9 are going to look like in the city.
From the federal
level. And because of that, I think that there will be a push to, ask these sorts of questions. What can we do to keep the existing developments that are all over the city around for the long term? But the first and foremost priority must be to preserve for the long term, for many decades to come, the development here in at Fulton and Elliot Chelsea. And to the extent that there is new infill housing, it should go toward preserving the affordability within that new development and within the NYCHA development itself. The vast majority of those funds should remain within the campuses. But if there becomes a question, a matter of public policy in which a small portion of the funds should be, utilized to help improve other campuses. Because I do think that if we are headed federally where we are purportedly headed, it may become a question, that perhaps that's a question to ask or to think about. The answer may be no. The answer may be we're not interested, but it may become incumbent upon this board to consider it.
Well, let me put a
So,
note.
Joe,
Yeah,
so just to flip the script a little bit, money staying within these campuses is still money going to NYCHA. It's still solving for NYCHA's problem.
Yeah.
That will be for this campus. So there's no conflict there. What could be the possibility, get this right, in terms of how to go ahead and create this development where we also have an opportunity to generate income. It may pave the way to future updates to other NYCHA campuses. So there's still to be a benefit.
As a
I
model.
mean, taking the coffers out of this community without solving all the problems that we have on this campus, that makes no sense to me. I don't think it makes sense, particularly to people who live here that feel that for decades things have been gone amiss and now there's an opportunity to fix them. I also just think it's not really in conflict. We keep the money here, we're solving for problems, and we're trying to continue to maintain the viability of NYCHA in this community, because that the cost will continue. It's not like it's gonna disappear. So if we spread the money around, we don't solve the problem.
After new buildings are built,
That was only my other comment. So I don't wanna dismiss your point, Liam. I'm just saying we can think of it as in a different way, that it's not taking away from NYCHA. It's solving for the NYCHA campuses that are.
And I will say that, I have thought about the same thing that Liam has mentioned and Roberta has mentioned. And I think what Roberta's saying actually does make sense, but I also hear what Dolores is saying. And I haven't landed anywhere yet on this specific point, but I like hearing what you all are saying on committee. I mean, it helps to inform my decision, and I would be curious when it is time for the audience to speak, what you all have to say on that topic. Katie?
I would think like philosophically, it is public land, so there shouldn't be some like insane excess amount of money. Because if there is, that means we're not giving enough affordable and subsidized housing. There's no reason that this
It's gonna be a
project
cash
would have,
generator.
yeah, it doesn't have to be a cash generator, because yes, you have a housing crisis, but it's more so affordability. People are leaving the city nonstop. So many of my friends have to leave because they cannot afford their rent increases. So we need the affordability, and this is public land, so it shouldn't generate profits for a private company or profits to renovate some other housing. We need affordable housing so people can stay in this community.
I mean, the example I would give is, it's a choice between a project at 80-20 generating $45 million with another NYCHA campuses versus a project being 50-50 or 75% affordable with varying degrees of affordability. That means we're helping solve the affordability crisis in the city here in our district at this no-cost public land, right? Because the way you get housing to be affordable is that the land cost is zero or almost zero. And that makes a difference. It makes a major, major difference. Yes, Beth.
Joe, appreciate the effort that went into this document, realizing that this is the first time that we or I seen this document.
Yes.
There could be other things that should be thought about, but two things that I think we or this committee could and should be doing is, one, drilling down on the bridge plan. And I went to the website and looked at the most recent report from May 2025. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, or people's needs being addressed. But is there something that's good, something needs to be fixed or amended? So that one would be drilling down on the bridge plan. And two, instituting, whatever word you want to call it, an update team, the committee or whatever. Of tenant associations, the developers, the electeds or their designees, to meet, let's say, twice a month. You just meet for an hour to update each other, what's going on, what the concerns are, and put out like maybe a 1-page minutes from those meetings. And you can email it out to folks or put it on the website. So people have timely information and essential source of information as opposed to.
Can I be really honest? You're talking about is a normal process that happens in all of the development projects. In this case, HUD is coming to do a presentation in this very room about tenant rights that came from a request from Maria, and Renee Kitt, the president of the Elliot Tenant Association, was uninformed.
But
The
it's a
process.
suggestion.
No, I know, but my point is, it's not about a suggestion. It's not how the process is working.
Right, but we can.
That's
but
right.
it's-
So we can just say, throw our hands up and say that that's the way it's always gonna be, or we could say,
Good.
as a board, this is the way we think. it
Gotcha.
should be. Let's
Here's
drill
what the
down,
process
let's
should
drill
be.
down on the bridge plan,
Mhm.
and let's have some way, like twice a month, where the stakeholders get together on Zoom or in a room. And address the issues and put out like a 1-pager saying, here's what was discussed in this meeting and here's the current status.
Better communication, better information. We have a hand up, from the committee. Right, it was JD, right?
Yeah.
JD?
Thank you. Clarification. If there is money generated, how does it go to help the NYCHA tenants? In other words, since it's going to be half and half market rate, NYCHA, how does that money go to benefit the NYCHA? There's no longer a NYCHA campus. So does it go to lower rents?
No,
How's-
JD, for example, if there were money generated from a market rate, partial market rate project, it goes specifically into a reserve fund for Chelsea NYCHA. So 25 years from now, when these buildings are renovated or new construction, you need to do more work. In other
Gotcha.
words,
That's what I'm asking, Joe. Something specific where it
Right.
goes, not
Well,
just.
couldn't you
open.
also hire more staff to do the repairs quick?
I think we're completing repairs that are here today versus the management that'll be here, that'll come tomorrow.
I'm not saying it's either or proposition.
Yeah, no, but there is no money for today. This all happens subsequent. It's not, and after buildings are renovated or newly constructed, they will be maintained because the developer will not get Section 8 subsidy unless they're maintained. They won't get a penny for that, so they have incentivized to do it. I want to go to the very last item, then to the floor. The very last item is the entire Chelsea community is part of any proposed redevelopment process.
Sorry, before you go to that, I'm not sure we addressed the third bullet.
I'm sorry.
And I did just want to note, like,
Sorry.
there absolutely should be a consideration of how to manage both, but there should not be a major or substantial sacrifice to the number of units and affordable units in doing so.
Yes, that's good. That's great.
Yeah, that's good.
Because the point of it is, we as a community know how to get those units in there without having
Yeah, there are many strategies to manage the bulk, but what I think would be a
Not-
mistake is if
not-
we
not-
saw a
not to
decrease in
right,
units.
right. Got it.
Agreed.
Okay, so the last item is the entire Chelsea community is part of any proposed redevelopment process, which brings us
More
full,
specific.
it brings us full circle back to our first comment. That this is a neighborhood. And it is very frustrating for me to hear over and over from our various electeds. The community has nothing to do with it. The idea that 10 South should not have an opinion about a major redevelopment plan, that the block association should not have an opinion. Every other project that has come to our community in the past like 4 decades, everybody, including NYCHA residents, have had opinions on. The West Chelsea rezoning, NYCHA residents were very heavily involved in, the block associations were involved in, and we all work together. There's a constant effort to separate the community here. And I just want to make a positive statement about that.
Can you give us a drill down a tiny bit, like, what does that mean? Like, I guess what I'm wondering is, are you saying that there's gonna be a vote at both campuses and in the entire?
No,
Chelsea?
no, I didn't say that at all. I think,
That's what I'm trying to understand.
maybe we want to just amplify to say the entire Chelsea community, its block associations, community organizations, not-for-profits, are part of the discussion around this development process. Maybe these were discussed.
Kept the prize and asked for input.
But I think, how I understood your bullet point there was the broader community that exists should be part of this discussion and consideration, considering the impact that it will have on the entire community.
Right. I guess what, yeah, I like it, but I'm just trying to understand, like, I wanna make sure that we're not just putting some pretty words down, but we understand what we're talking about.
I was actually trying to be a little bit easier on the electeds, so that you're got more teeth in, and I appreciate it.
Okay, so you said, what was it? Should be kept surprised, or what was it? Oh my God.
That was a.
Right, whatever.
Well,
Yeah, but what did you say?
Kept the prize and asked for it.
Well, yeah, but again, I think I get the idea with that. It's more about everyone's part of this. There's no votes, but it's part of the whole community discussion.
Yeah, I wanna make sure we're not.
Got it. All right, so sorry. Roberta.
I both agree that the community should be, have input and be apprised. But I do think it is important to state that the primary group that should have input here are the tenants of the Fulton and Elliot Chelsea campuses, because while the community does have a stake in this, I acknowledge that. I think that there is a bigger stake for those tenants on those campuses, and that the community's input should be considered and should be important, but should be somewhat subordinate to that of the tenant groups.
I'm gonna say it should not be dismissed.
It should not be dismissed.
That's the problem we're having right now. It's being dismissed. So we can wordsmith, figure it out and see how to do it. Rachel. On this point.
Oh, no, I wanted to supplement the list, so let me know when it's a good time to.
Right now, because we're at the end. So
Right, that's what I thought, okay.
Throwing ideas, so we're gonna go to the public and hear from everybody.
Yes, sounds good. So I know that as part of our prolonged discussion on this topic, there were also mentions of having a clear right of return policy for the tenants, because there was concern over potential forced displacements. So I don't know where Joe this
That
fits
will be
in,
in the
but just
relocation agreement, Rachel.
that will be in the relocation
Yeah,
agreement.
it has to be, yeah.
Okay, and perhaps this fits under the bridge plan that Kevin rightfully raised, but interim repairs, I would like to, for the committee to consider any urgent interim repairs in the current campuses to be continued so that the quality of life of our residents is not compromised.
Yeah, I think there's a whole section, we've written about that before, we can drop a bulleted version of that into this. Okay, now.
Can I just make one last, sorry, I can add to the list, this is the last one. But this goes, I think, to what Kevin said a little bit, but I actually think there should be a website that the developer.
They have it.
They have, I know, but I guess what I mean is like a really, like an updated informative.
They have it updated. They do.
And they say like when the different talks are gonna be happening on different topics so that people
Oh,
know
no.
about it.
Yes,
That's
no,
what I mean.
That's
think-
what I was talking
yeah.
about, is that the community getting together, right, the stakeholders getting together.
Yeah.
is, I think we should write these, yeah, I think it's almost, I think you're at a level of detail here, because the truth is that we need to get these big principles out there to try to get our electeds and this process to consider actual values here. We're getting values, right? That's a little more in the execution.
Yeah.
Yeah, so can we go to the very patiently waiting public?
We are going to begin with Alexa Cruz. And then we will go to Paul Devlin.
And thank you all for waiting this long, really appreciate it. I mean it.
As a tenant, we matter. And there's more emphasis on the, development and the money and all that. And I believe in section 9, and I believe we could get federal money from, we do, federal, city and state have money. And they use it for something else, they use it for the Hudson yards. But they don't use it for the tenants, and they wanna sell it to these developers, these rich developers. You know, what are we gonna do after they convert it to private? It's not gonna be NYCHA anymore. It's going to be Essence, and then it's gonna be market rate rent. And it's a market rate rent. People are gonna lose their money, their apartments within 20, you mentioned 25 years.
So,
And what happens to people that are low income, that are unable to pay rent in New York City?
so I thought it's
Well, I
important.
think the community matters. The community matters, not the developers or the rich people or the elected officials. We matter. Thank you.
So that's how we started, and I think it's important that there's one thing that we would not support at all, that we should put in this document. Is that in every process, every proposal that's been made, is that NYCHA retained ownership of the land. And that as part of that ownership, this had to stay affordable, so people make, this had to stay affordable in perpetuity.
Alexa,
That we should put down.
can you just remind me, Fulton or Elliot Chelsea? I think it's Elliot.
Chelsea.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Hey,
How dare you? I forgot.
So you need, wait.
Paul Devlin.
I'm only giving you 2 minutes. I forgot to
You
put
know.
the timer.
I had a long list that I then,
No, I'm putting.
so, all right, I have 2 things I'd like to do additive to the list. I think, Joe, this is a great discussion. And then I want to go through some fine points on here, and then I want to talk about Chelsea land use too. All right, so I want to echo Kevin. I want to echo Kevin and Rachel's points about we should have a section here on the bridge plan, because it's gonna be 16 to 20 years of construction. I think we need to address interim repairs and maintenance and ongoing process, and making sure that maintaining the current buildings during the process.
Irrespective of what it is.
I think that's a section that's missing in this document, and I think we need to add that. And I would echo Kevin's statement that we need to have more structured communication systems for the residents. There's a lot of misinformation out there. People talking about HOU, people talking about tenant association surveys and petitions and all of that. We should start a practice of once a month, twice a month, regular meetings, every Monday at 7 PM. Everybody knows NYCHA will be there, the developers will be there, community board will be there, residents will be there. Information that changes month to month is communicated on a regular basis, so everyone knows what's going on. So I think those 2 things should be added to this general document. In terms of the document itself, the relocation plan, I would suggest we call it a permanent relocation plan, because people are going to move from one apartment into another apartment. And we need to understand that they're moving from 14C to 17D, and everybody needs to have very clear and precise information about where they're moving to. And so I just think that we need to be very clear, like when the development plan comes out and the new schemes are built to build it, we'll know the apartment numbers. So let's say you're moving from this apartment to that apartment.
Well, that makes the assumption that everything is all new.
No.
And we're not at that point yet.
No, Joe, that does not assume that. That does not assume that. It is, if you are moving from apartment 7A, moving out for renovation, moving back into 7A, that needs to be spelled out, is what I'm saying. Everybody needs to understand, because you're right, we're talking about human beings, and we need to talk about their lives and how it's impacted. I think that I really, so I'm going as fast as I can. If I
Okay,
stop
please.
debating, we'll go through it.
Him a little longer, he is.
So I think
Okay.
in the relocation process, we should pay for movers and packers. I think we should need to protect, not people who are not on leases. I talked about this at the last HHS meeting. People who aren't currently on leases, they shouldn't be evicted because of this process. We need to protect those people living in NYCHA
who aren't on leases and make sure they get protected, and we've talked about that before. The survey, I think the results should be presented by building as well as by campus. Because some buildings, each campus may be slightly different, so we have to make sure we have a high enough participation level so that we can, all campuses, all buildings, all 22 buildings.
Instead of the
We
vote,
should
not a survey.
see the vote survey, whatever term you want to call it. This is
No,
a
not a
debate.
vote.
So, all right, the vote then, but I think it needs to be done. I think the phrasing of the questions needs to be agreed upon prior to expecting people are gonna respect the results. So we need to have both sides of this debate involved in the framing of the questions of that vote so that everybody understands it ahead of
The
time.
lawyers agree.
I think that the lawyers are agreeing, good. I think that the fund staying in Chelsea, I think that's an important part that we also make sure that Hudson Guild and the recreational facilities and all of that is part of that formula. It's not just NYCHA apartments. Love the idea of creating a capital reserve fund from the funds. Let's put, like, it's like any other co-op building, if 20% of your budget goes into a capital reserve fund. Let's create a capital reserve fund for future NYCHA residents. The language and more of this is gonna come out of Chelsea land use, I think. If there is rezoning, Chelsea land use will deal with new scope and scale and size and bulk and all that. Chelsea land use will be talking about this at our next meeting. We're gonna have a discussion about the potential for rezoning and what position that the land use committee would take on a land use issue to bring forward to the board. That's on our agenda for the next meeting. One point I just want to make here is that any new housing, if there is a rezoning and there are more units, there should be an increase in NYCHA units as well. And I think that we have to be careful with the language, 50% affordable. I don't want them to sneak in and say the NYCHA units are part of that 50%. It should be 50% of non-NYCHA units that are new. Thank you.
Oh, Wednesday, next.
Original, March 21st. The 21st. July.
And Clara, David Holoka, David Warren, and that is, I will put you down, John. And that,
Thank you for the graciousness.
yes, and that was Paul Devlin. He is a significant member on Chelsea Land Use and co-chair of Hell's Kitchen Land Use.
Former co-chair of Chelsea.
That's not any, get more time. Wait, is Clara here? Oh,
David-
that's not.
and David Holoka.
Yeah, David Holoka, David Warren,
Clara, what's the last,
Lena,
Clara, what's the last name?
right? Oh,
But I'll go.
okay.
Yeah, David?
Yeah, I would be, very wary of making
You must lift your head and speak out.
making a pro-demolition, statement at all. If the buildings aren't demolished, the residents still have a choice between section 8 and section 9. If they're demolished and rebuilt, it's going to be section 8, and I don't think we've heard from the majority of the residents which way they want to go.
Just put the timer on.
Right, I'd appreciate a little extra time.
Just a little extra, he's a co-chair. Go.
And in terms of the survey, that was always predicated on a flat out lie. That it would cost as much to renovate the buildings as it would to replace them, and NYCHA doesn't even defend this anymore. According to their own numbers, it's $0.7 billion more to replace than to renovate, more likely an actual billion. The idea was the cost was a toss-up, hence we'll let the residents decide. That was completely untrue. They were allowed to make a decision on the survey that allowed them to check a box that said that Chelsea would be rezoned. That was part of the choice for the new construction with rezoning that would take, they were told, 5 years instead of 6 to 8 years for new buildings without rezoning, and they weren't given a 2-year time frame for renovation, which is what it would actually cost. They were promised in-unit washers and dryers and made a choice to upzone Chelsea. And this plan, as it turns out, will remove 260 bedrooms from Fulton and Elliot Chelsea. That is a permanent loss of public housing in the city that was left to the residents.
The larger
And
apartments,
that should not be the case. The whole choice was predicated on a lie. NYCHA has never substantiated claims that the buildings couldn't be renovated in the same way and at the same cost as other packed and red options. What distinguishes the buildings is not their condition, but their location in Chelsea, and that is what ties Elliot Chelsea and related together. This was always about a massive upzoning that would benefit related at NYCHA so that NYCHA could solve its ills.
I think we want to make sure that any project that goes forward works within current zoning, and perhaps we may even want to reduce the existing zoning. It was reduced all around these sites earlier, but there was a carve out made for Elliot, Chelsea and NYCHA. We want to say that there should be no loss of bedrooms. And I think we want to say that we don't find the process to date to have been legitimate, and that we stand firmly against the currently proposed alternatives, regardless of the rest of the direction we want to go in.
Clara break. Followed by David Warren.
And,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, Clara Bright, I am putting the timer on, who's gonna respect the 2 minutes, with the number of speakers we have, it's almost 1 hour of listening to people.
Go ahead. And we want to hear it.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. I had 3 topics. So first was
Your name.
education. Clara Bright, yeah. Number 1 was education, is actually. Number 2, job opportunities, and the first 2 will solve the third one, which is crime prevention. So since I'm here and I've heard some things from you, I'd like to bring up what is actually the height of the building, because I've heard from many people that they're worried about the sun. I mean, the fact that the buildings that are too high, they're going to block the sun. So we need to worry about that. And accountability, of course, more transparency, and also those meetings that you mentioned, they were supposed to happen. They should happen, not only on the paper. And unfortunately, for each and every one of you, I have some bad news that I have to share with you today. That's why I'm here. After pandemic, I don't know what's happened, but the manuals disappeared, rules disappeared, respect disappeared. I'm talking about the workplace. There is no more respect for the managers, for the elderly people that we look up at. Those don't exist anymore. They're out. So even coming to these meetings would be nice if we bring more people. I mean, some of you would have children, grandchildren, to kind of get them involved, because I look around and look at the numbers of people we have in Manhattan and how many people are here today. That is a very red flag, I would say. And again, this campuses, they will offer children and youth activities. And by people getting involved in activities, they will not do bad things, because happy people don't commit crimes. And
30 seconds.
oh yeah. All right, so
Keep going.
with this being said, this was what I wanted to address today. And if each and every one of you will start implementing this or remember this situation, maybe we can make the world a better place. And the first step starts with us to making a change.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
David Warren, followed by Nino, Tortzella, from 436 West 27th.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Thank the committee members for their dedicated service. I know they're going.
I don't want to put you on the camera. Go ahead, David.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here.
This proposed plan is a dystopian nightmare. You look at the buildings, the wind tunnels alone has never been addressed. Will be devastating. We have wind tunnels from Hudson Yards, with the combination of both will be horrendous if this is built. If we take the hypothetical of that this goes through, they demolish the buildings and the federal government cuts the funding in the middle. Who's gonna pay the rent for these tenants all of a sudden if the federal government cuts everything? So that would be a horrible, horrible thing. I just think that, and the proposal itself, even the most positive aspect, is gonna take more time than the space program did to land man on the moon. So if we can spend that money, if federal government spend that money, when the government spend that money on the space program, we certainly can spend money on NYCHA and rehabilitate NYCHA and bring it back to where it was in the past. It's only deteriorated because it's been neglect of finances. And then because there's no finances, it becomes a little depressing for the people in the community. So we just gotta spend money, get the community back on, and be inclusive with our NYCHA neighbors. And once again, thank you all for your hard work.
Nina Tortzella from 436 427, and then Jackie Lara, followed by Matt Robinson from 161 West 64.
Come on, Jackie. How are you?
I'm gonna speak about this, but anyway, my name is Jacqueline Lara, and I'm an ordinary resident. I come from no politics, I have no connections, no title, just a voice, a deep love for my community. When I ran for TA president, I lost by 16 points. It stung, sure, but it also lit a fire in me. Because every conversation, every hallway, every knock on neighbors' doors, I heard the same thing. People want to be heard and they want to be protected. So I ran against Eric Botcher, city council, and 7,056 people voted for me. Not because I had all the answers and because I was willing to listen, to fight and stand with them. I'm still standing and I still believe we don't need demolition to move forward. We need investment, preservation, and respect. This community is not disposable. Our homes and our histories, our neighbors, they matter. I didn't win the seat, but I earned something more important. I earned their trust. And there isn't not until every voice is valued and every home is safe. And I will continue fighting for our development. In my opinion, maybe we should separate both developments and do influence. Separate us because we shouldn't have been together in the first place. You know, there's like gonna be a lot of displacement going on here. They're saying 5%, that's a lie. All right, there's gonna be a lot. There's gonna be a chaos and a lot of families will be displaced. Not that we don't have bad apples, because everybody has bad apples.
Every place.
But, you know, no demolition and separate the developments. Thank you.
Matt Robinson, followed by Norma Arboleda. And then Mary Renee, and then Renee. After Matt. Okay, after Matt, yes.
My name's Matthew Robinson. I live in Chelsea. I have an architectural background. One thing that I haven't heard of, for one, it's 2,199 apartments or something like that. It's more important to say not that, but there are 5,006 bedrooms or something like that. Translated to that there's so many 5 bedrooms, so many 4 bedrooms, so many 3 bedrooms, so many 2 bedrooms, and that they hold to that. Because it's very easy for them to just take a 5 bedroom and say, no, that it's the same unit, it's a 2 bedroom. No, it's not, it's 5 bedroom. I think that's very important to note. In addition to it, I've not heard anyone say that there's so many kids that are 500 kids that are from 18 to from 0 to 18, or what the breakdown is, because when they're 10 years old, they will be 35 years old by the end of this thing. And I think it's the age of the youth is important to know in terms of the timetable of everything else. In addition to that, with every age, there's no sense of that so many are 30, so many are in their 40s, so many are in their 50s, so many are in their 60s. I think that's important. Also, it's told that there's a lot of people within the apartments that are not true residents, and that they should be acknowledged or at least understood in terms of the numbers. Again, I have an architectural background. 2 things in terms of land use. I think that the school should be better placed where the medical building is, and you could have it be a 6-story building. I think though, in terms of the play of this community, it's important to take the medical building, take the school, and redevelop that as 6-story buildings, now 3-story buildings, combine them. You could also take, as I mentioned before, you can do a yin-yang thing where the Hudson Guild and the school use the same building, and so that they share the theater, the facilities, so that there's a larger gym, because the gym used by one is no different than the other. But again, for a community in terms of land use and other things, also, you were saying something about Fulton, that there's no space. I'm just one last comment, that there is no youth center on the other side. I think important is the taxpayers that are west of the complex in the Fulton thing should be up for grabs in terms of taking some of that land and developing that with the campus, rather than taking within the campus and saying, where can we carve out? Because there is space to be used.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
It is Renee Kick, followed by Pam Wolf, and then Tweet.
Me, but no, okay, I'm actually saying the statement of Mary Hicks.
Oh.
Okay, so she had to leave. What she wanted to say is, where are her lawyers?
who was to count wrong and lie to us. And she's asking for Mickey to step down and she'll run against him, suing him for comment made to me about Chelsea. The elders, they should call 311 for their services because they are being harassed.
Yes.
So that was Mary Hicks from Fulton Houses.
Now go on to Renee Kitts.
For Renee Kitts. I'm a resident and I am the Resident Association President of the Elliot Chelsea Houses. Once again, my concern are the residents, my community, my neighbors of where I live, where we live. You right now are in our home. You are our guest. And I continue to say, to see building a new Hudson Guild first, not concerned. Building a new and expanded PS 33, not concerned. Because when you say that, Resolution 279, when we had to go to PS 33 and literally say, you cannot vote for something when you don't have enough information, and you are literally on a written piece of paper saying you don't have any information, that you cannot vote on it.
Yes.
Because they were voting to get their children out to school. Yes, it's important. But let's understand who will be taking the brunt of everything. It is the residents, my community, my neighbors, my friends, my family, my other mother and my mother. We will all be taking the brunt of everything. Community facilities are not my concern.
That's right.
We will not be NYCHA tenants in project-based Section 8. Your really thing that should have been done, Hudson Yards is right there. They use NYCHA developments all the while. You know about the EB5 program. You all knew about it. Nobody cared, nobody minded. Comprehensive modernization under Section 9 should have been put on the table. They want something, we get this. We get full renovation, stay in Section 9. That is what should have been done. They lie, they cheat, you see an empty lot, you know it. The reason we are here is because PS 33 was here. The neighborhood health center was here. We were specifically put on this site for that reason. So let me wrap it up. My first, my main, my only, foremost than anything is concerned is for the residents of Elliot Chelsea, my home, my friends, my mother, this community. That is the thing I am more concerned about anything. The community facilities is not important. This is what needs to be worked on. Comprehensive modernization under Section 9. Oh, by the way, when you say anti-displacement, yes, but under Section 9. That's what needs to be done.
Thank you. Annie Campbell, followed by Jean, followed by Christine Burkett.
I can barely stand up. Okay, I think everybody here knows, and I'm Pamela Wolf. I'm a Chelsea resident for the last 70 years. I've seen it all. I saw everything happen. I saw all the buildings come down. I saw these buildings all go up. These people are right. First of all, everything Renee said, yes. Right with that. I am fundamentally opposed to taking public land, which belongs to us, all of us, and handing it over to a private developer for profit. That is fundamentally immoral. I'm sorry, that's how I feel, period. I have walked around these buildings many, many times and more often, more recently. They are rock solid structures. There's nothing structurally wrong with any of them. I have heard complaints that, from people like Miguel, who spoke the other day about an elevator shaft that was collapsing at the bottom level.
Elevator pit.
An elevator pit, not the shaft, the pit, in two locations. That is something that can be repaired. It should never have happened to begin with because maintenance should have been being done. Wasn't. There was this failure. It's fixable. It is not something that requires demolishing an entire building. That's where I stand. I could say a whole lot more, but there are a lot of other people who have a lot more important things to say.
We followed by Christine Burkett, followed by Lizette Colon.
So I'm the treasurer for CCBA and I'm deferring my position for the president to speak. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for holding this very important meeting tonight. I'm Susan Palmer Marshall, the president of the Council of Chelsea Block Associations. And our motto is working daily to improve the quality of life for those who live, work in, and visit Chelsea. Live in is the priority, and the community, sense of community that Renee and Joe and everyone's talking about. I also wanted to go on record that while we are in the process of forming our position, like you, we are still standing with CB4, that we need more transparency and more information available to all stakeholders. I want to quote something from the late Donald C. Farber, who was an entertainment attorney who wrote a book called Common Sense Negotiation, The Art of Winning Gracefully. The best deals are created in the atmosphere of mutual respect and trust. In this way, everyone wins, but a foundation is laid for future cooperation. And I think the late Innocence and NYCHA have shown us distrust by, pulling the wool over our eyes, so to speak. But the winning part is getting as much as you ought to have, neither taking advantage nor settling for less than you're entitled to. Gracefully means convincing the other party that you have a community of interest rather than a conflict of interest. And I think that's very important. And then just speaking on behalf of my own block association, which when I turn out my corner, I'm right on 9th and 19th. We've got Fulton houses right there. And to David Holopa's point, the height of the buildings for you, Paul, is very concerning for us. The shadows, the sunshine, we don't want to lose all that. And just one last thing, I will forget my last thing. It's okay.
Christine Bertay, followed by Lizette Colon, and then Tito Vergara.
Yes, thank you. Very good discussion, impressive. So I've been concerned about the amount of square feet and not units, which are dedicated to NYCHA. People talk about rooms and they talk about units and they talk about, we need to have exactly the same amount of square feet that is in NYCHA, and keep it in the future in case that there is a new, platform. Because let's say, as David was saying, 26 bedroom are living, that means it's 13 apartments, right? So well, okay, what? 260 bedrooms.
Right.
That's a lot of apartments that we are losing.
And large apartments that don't get built today.
Right. So I think keeping, no matter what's the solution, but keeping the same amount of square footage is critical. I'm also concerned, but it doesn't apply to both situations, but that all affordable buildings are completed before luxury construction starts. And I don't know whether, it's different. You are saying we need to do the luxury to, fund the, but I don't want to see a whole slew of luxury building and everybody say, oh, oops, we don't have any money anymore. 40 seconds. Right, 40 seconds. Okay, and the last piece is all the open green space first should be maintained and accessible to everyone without a fee. In some presentation I've seen, people were talking about some portion of the campus being subject to a fee. This is not acceptable. And indeed, keeping all the trees to me is very important. No more than 10% of the trees should go away, no matter what is being done, right? And as far as the discussion about voting, essentially, I'm sorry, just a little bit. It seems to me that the issue of demolition versus renovation is really more of a technical issue for a building. There may be a building that is not good shape. I'm just saying the people of that building should make the decision, that may not be a decision to be made across the campus. And I'm not sure about that.
Thank you.
So we have Lizette Colon, followed by Tito Vergara.
You will follow me.
Yeah, sure.
And I need to support.
Yeah.
So you got it.
Everything
You have to move back to where the X is. They can't.
Yeah. And by the way, we know we can hear you when you start speaking.
Everything that Vanessa said, I echo. And I hope that you take it to your heart because she summed it up. And I wish that you would have had her at the table when you were preparing that report. And you still have time to just listen to her and listen to Jackie and listen to the people that live there before you present that on July the 9th. Because otherwise we would be going.
We're not saying this on that.
Okay, no, but just to make sure. And also the information, all this information has to be clear to the tenants before any vote. And all this information is not getting to them. So I hope that we find a way that we have all of this information in a fact sheet, in a flyer before July the 9th, because otherwise that town hall would be half information and chaos again, because people feel that they have been cheated. And we are part of that problem because we are not informing them well. So if we have time, there are people that are willing to translate and have it available for the people. We are willing to do that, but you have to help us because otherwise we're not going to make any progress. So I really hope that this is just a draft and that their voices are taken into account.
So, first of all, I wanna thank you for the discussion you had today. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that it was as positive as it was, because I expected you guys to be the enemy. But apparently you guys know where we're coming from. I just wanna express my experience with this kind of demolition. I lived on the Lower East Side, grew up there, and urban renewal came into my community and displaced 2,500 families with the promise that they will get brand new affordable housing in a couple of years. It took 50 years of fighting, 50 years of arguing, 50 years of going to the community board. That it wasn't until the demographic of the area changed and we were able to get city representatives that reflect us because they understood us, and that's how the dynamics changed. We were able to get affordable housing plus luxury housing, both. And what was suggested here kind of reflects that. Let's get some housing on the premises to subsidize and to rebuild the public housing that is here now. Otherwise, it's going to be like what happened on the Lower East Side. People were wandering. People were living in homeless shelters. People were living with their families tripled up, quadrupled up. And we lost a lot of families because of that. And I want this to be a 50-year fight. One more thing I want to say is I used to be on the Community Board 3 on the Lower East Side. And I know that you guys can only recommend, but if you work with the community, with people that are actually being affected by this, they should be part of these discussions.
Yes.
Be on the panel so that we can all work together to save Chelsea housing. Because otherwise, what happens here will happen throughout the country.
Yeah. Thank you, Tito.
Thank you, Tito. Lady Andre, followed by Tomasita Negron.
And then Shereen.
Okay, hi, everyone. You know, the elected officials have said to us over and over again that the reason they support this project is because the majority of tenants are for it. Though they have no data points to support that, and in fact, we have data to the contrary. In the recent election, Jackie Laura, who did not appear in any panels, never spoke at any events, but ran on a strictly anti-demolition, save NYCHA, save affordable housing, don't privatize, public land for public benefit. In the district, 66 electoral district, we can change Fulton, won by 56.48% of the vote to Eric Botcher's 44%. And in ED 61, which comprises Elliot Chelsea, she won by 58.42%. That's the only data we have that is an actual vote. I want to remind you all that the survey told the tenants that it was faster for them to have demolition, something which we found out subsequently was not true. It was on the survey that it would be faster. So that's another piece of information that's been missing. I also want to remind everybody that the Reese houses, another NYCHA development, took a vote to stay in section 9. They were given the option of a vote. And why is it that one campus gets a vote and another campus doesn't? There's a change coming. We have a new mayoral candidate. We have Brad Hoyle as borough president. Brad has told me he would support a vote for the NYCHA residents. And I also want to mention that we have been at this a long time. If you have read the DEIS, which I did read, and there were a lot of pages in it, you will see that the unmitigated effects are definitely happening to the NYCHA residents, but they're also happening to the community. There are people like David Holoco who live as close to the demolitions and the construction and the particulate matter and the noise, which all of which are not well mitigated, in addition to the traffic, in addition to the vermin, in addition to all those things. That is affecting all of us. We are paying twice for NYCHA's malfeasance and their failure, and the fact that they're the biggest slumlord in the city. First, because the Elliot, Chelsea, and Fulton tenants do not have the decent housing they deserve. And second, because for 16 to 25 years, we will all be subjected to this. So please remember that when you go forward in these discussions. Thank you.
Lisa, followed by Sharima.
Yes, followed by Sharima.
Well, my comment is very short.
Your name?
At the begin, Tomasita, thank you. At the beginning, when they first did the meeting with these developers, they were showing all the beautiful apartments, and they were talking about what do you rather do, go into a new apartment, and they were showing all these luxury stuff. The point is, a lot of people didn't understand what was really going on. And they had a table here where you signed up if that's what you wanted. So everybody thought, oh, we're gonna get a new apartment, but they didn't know the what was behind everything. Another thing, they don't tell you that when all these new buildings come up, you're not gonna be able to go in through the same entrance. Okay, because yeah, we have one entrance and the people with the money has another door, which is what's happening right here in Fulton section. Yeah. Basically that, and it's just so many lies that the community is so fed up with it. And I've been here a very long time. I'm 70 years old. So I've been here almost 70. And I raised my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren are here.
Yeah. I want to drink what you're drinking.
Yeah. So, you know, we've been around, and my son is a ex-Marine, he's a police officer, and he grew up in this neighborhood, and everybody knows him and respects him, and he helps out within the community. So breaking out all this up, it's a disaster. So just keep us in mind that we are not just a neighborhood, we are a family here. I come down with shopping bags and groceries, and these kids that grew up, Ma, I'll carry it for you. And they literally grab it, and I'm like, I'm okay, I can do this. No, they grab it, they walk me. They all do this with the elderly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sharima.
Yeah, on the activist, Sharima, followed by Salinas Miranda,
And after Salinas, we're gonna have,
Marnie Galasta.
yes, and after Marnie, Amy.
And John.
Yeah, no, do we have?
I got him on the list. It's on the list. Hello, everyone. Hi. It's my first time here.
I know, but you gotta speak louder, otherwise we can't hear you.
Just stand on the end.
On the X? Oh my goodness, you make me okay.
We got you.
Well, I live at 450, right? And I think I have some
Four
volunteers.
fifty is,
Right here on Seventh.
77th Street. It's
Yeah.
right here.
All right, and y'all have some volunteers that be having like one of these survey cards. I didn't understand that the survey card was for me to sign for the demolition. I thought I was against the demolition. But I didn't know that the person, the gentleman, was taking people's signature and writing.
And where were they from?
Pack partners.
Yeah. Yep. So I like to know, cause I told him before, cause first I'm thinking I'm signing something against it, but I didn't know I was signing something for it. So I've been living here for 10 years and I don't think that y'all need to do a demolition. I think that you need to renovate it and whatever that has lead in it, because I used to do construction a long time ago. So my building is kind of unlevel, but some has lead, some has asbestos, some has probably black mold, I don't know, but it's been there for like 79 years. So I figured that I don't think I should have a demolition. I think I should check all apartments, front and back, from the roof of it up. But y'all should get some good volunteers to not force people's signatures.
Can I see that?
That's a.
No, yeah,
No.
but it's something similar
Oh,
to
No,
the
it's not,
card.
it's not. No, we were getting nervous that someone was going around.
Look to this,
It's a
and
card.
they have it like the clipboard, and they be like going around asking people, but they've been doing that. Yeah, so I just wanna know, I don't know if it's for, if y'all, they work for y'all?
No, they not.
Okay.
Sorry.
But
But,
I told you, I
Shrima,
was like, don't
Shrima.
put my hand in something that I don't, you don't
Shrima,
understand.
we have a question. When did the person come to your house to talk to you about this?
No, they be standing out on, in front of the building.
When?
It's every day.
Okay.
It's a week.
Yeah.
Monday
When
to
it-
Saturday.
today-
Wait, hold on.
Thursday, that was in June, that was in May.
They go
Yeah.
every day.
Every day?
They constantly do.
Selena.
Saturday and Sunday.
No,
All right,
Saturday, I seen that on Saturday.
Thank you.
Saturday's a week.
Selena's, you're up next, followed by Marty Halata.
I live in the Elliot houses. We are still having issues with Pack Partner. They never left the scene. We are still getting complaints from the residents. They are being harassed on this campus daily. In particular, the elderly and the adults who are trustworthy and fall prey to them. At first, they were trying to get people to come out of camera and say they approved the plan. That was too difficult for them to do. So now they have a sneaky approach. The goal is to get the names of the FEC tenants, regardless of how the tenants feel on the proposal. No signatures required. They obtain the name in a conversation and fill out the cards that they say support the plan to rebuild. They are on site 7 days a week on the clock and know what tenants come out of what building. They know the address and fill out the cards themselves for submission to legislators. One elderly told me that they approached her. She said she's not for the demolition, but they still asked for her name. And when she said, I'm not giving you my name, they pleaded and said, can I please have your name? And you heard her testimony. This is a vile and deceptive approach. They ignore our petition but compete against it. A survey was already done. It was already decided at the March CLU meeting that they would cease and desist. This screams that their survey is not valid and our petition is.
Right.
And confirms that our elected officials are working against us. It is obvious by now. Everyone knows that this has been a messy, deceptive, and biased practice. This is not about the tenants. Please do not condone their behavior. Acknowledge the obvious. And let's not forget, they said it costs 1.9 to rebuild. That's double the cost. They're spending double the amount of money to demolish and rebuild. And also, we still don't have proof that buildings are in disrepair. Where are the documented evidence? How can we move forward on this plan? And 74% of the tenants did not participate in the survey. This is not a resident-led process.
Marty Halata, followed by Brian Sloan.
Okay.
Oh, Amy Klein. Marty Halata, followed by Amy Klein.
Beautiful people, I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna blow your mind. The right to return is a myth. The developer, you know, like Selena said, has workers running around telling everyone there's a federal right to return, and that's a lie. So even tenants that have a contract, the right to return is often conditional. And the conditions are set by the private developer in the new leases, which are very strict. And it disproportionately disqualified the original tenants. Common barriers include a new screening criteria. Number one, criminal background checks. 2, credit checks. 3, good tenancy records, like no lease violations. Like not having your dog on a leash in the hallway more than 3 times. Such a violation will lead to eviction. So to conclude, these private leases are almost always stricter than the public housing leases, making many former tenants ineligible. So even if they have a right to return, they don't qualify under the new rules. Number 2, redevelopment often takes years longer than projected. During that time, families may move multiple times, often far from the original site. Some find permanent housing elsewhere. Others lose contact or give up due to unstable conditions. So tenants are displaced by delay. Number 3, change in unit mix. The redevelopment often reduces the number of deeply affordable units. People have been saying that. So fewer larger units, like for big families can't come back because those units aren't available. So even if families want to return, there's no unit that fits their needs. So tenants are displaced by design. Do I have more time?
30 seconds.
Oh, and again, no legal support. Most tenants can't afford legal action.
Yes.
There is no strong legal enforcement mechanism. Also, HUD has already said that they can't enforce. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the funding. And also many people here have seen Raising Liberty Square, that documentary. Only 5 tenants returned. That was the same developer. Thousands were displaced. As Tito said, homeless people are on the streets and the whole community is destroyed. So fight the power people.
Thank you, Mark. Amy?
Tenants organize a protest. Would you guys come? Would you guys come against a protest against the elected officials? Would you guys come?
Again, we always come to
Think
violent
about
things.
it. Think about it.
Amy Klein, the next one is Brian Sloan, followed by John Mudd.
Hi, I'm Brian Sloan. I want to talk about the reality of the project before us. Actually, the 2 biggest crises facing our city. Number 1 is affordability, and 2 is the city's financial future. I think I want to be very clear with you. I heard some people sort of question like, why developer profitability? It is super essential here. It's not a side effect. It's the very engine for the public good. The profit that is generated from market rate homes is the only way to fund brand new, dignified housing for thousands of our NYCHA families. It's what makes the project bankable enough to secure billions in private loans. And it is the necessary reward for taking on massive financial risk that shield us, the taxpayer. Profitable projects is also a quality, well-maintained project for decades to come. Can we say that if the buildings are just renovated, will they be in good condition 50, 75 years in the future?
Yes, they will.
But the simple truth is this, but for the developer participation driven by profit, this project would not happen. After there's decades of public disinvestment, the only viable path forward is to engage with related. This is critical when you look at our city's finances. We have a large projected budget crisis accelerated by the exodus of taxpayers. And why are they leaving? They're leaving because the number 1 reason they give is that it's so expensive to live here, which is driven by our housing shortage. And addressing this isn't just a social goal, it's become a fiscal imperative. The affordability crisis is a fact. So CPI shelter costs here are rising 5% a year. We have the highest metro inflation in the country, and it is driven by shelter. It's unsustainable, and it is the reason, it is because we are failing to build housing. So for perspective, states like Florida and Texas are building 3 times more housing per capita than we are, and they are seeing lower housing costs. So to fix this, we have to change our strategy. We have to dramatically increase our total housing supply. We need to unleash market rate development. So I would take that number and make 0% affordable housing, but that includes the NYCHA housing as part of that. And that is the most powerful tool that we have to create options, ease pressure across the entire market, and build a stronger Chelsea and a stronger New York. Thanks.
I just need to know one thing on your testimony. There is 7.2 billion of renovation being done in NYCHA with private sector money today. That's either completed or in construction. So to say that the only way to do anything for NYCHA tenants was new construction, that developers won't get those loans, is simply factually inaccurate. Because these numbers come from the NYCHA Pact website. And all of those things are privately funded with mortgages from consortiums of banks and bonds.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes, for the renovation.
So I think that he needs to identify that he's speaking for
I
himself.
have 2
Self
minutes
as
to
an
speak, right, so I can get the details.
No, but you need to identify that you're speaking as an individual because that you are on this community board. So.
I'm not until July.
You're on the
1st.
community board.
You're on the community
I'm on the
board.
community board,
To
yeah, yes.
identify that and that you're speaking as
Okay.
yourself and not, because it's not a board position. What you are speaking is not a board position.
Yeah, that's right.
You need to identify yourself ahead of time, okay?
John Mudd, John Mudd, follow, John, Salinas, we're not gonna go in that route today because we've been great though, haven't we? Come on, as a group here, we've been friggin' great in respecting each other. John Mudd, but I will always call out factual inaccuracies. John Mudd, followed by Missy Adams on the line.
Thank you. So he's coming on the community board?
He is been appointed,
Been appointed by.
Eric Boscher.
That's pretty good.
John, you're here to speak.
Wait a minute, it's not ad hominem.
Yeah, like.
At all.
It's not-
He can say whatever he wants.
It's not ad hominem.
Okay, okay.
You don't have to agree, but you're gonna be respectful.
Okay.
There we go.
My name's John Mudd. I'm with Midtown South Community Council. I've been living here for
You gotta speak louder, John. We can't hear you.
36 years, okay? I've seen development. I've seen what's happened in Midtown. I've seen the hotels come up in Washington, small tenement housing. And by the way, I echo JD's, my Kentucky brother. What he says, it is, why are we negotiating here? It just seems like we're kind of finding ways to negotiate their housing ways, 60-40 and all this. I mean, it's really public land, public property, and we should be protecting it. We need you as a community board to protect the people to stand with us, okay? We don't need to negotiate with the private developers. They got a private club of their own, and the reason we have the state we're in is because of the developers' free hand. They own the city, okay? You got the city of, yes, you got the mixed use project. You've got, they wanted to demolish 10 area. They want to do things their way with the train transit system. You don't negotiate with profiteers, okay? They have no interest in the public, okay? Nothing whatsoever. That's right. And it's sadistic for this to go on and on and on, and where's the people that lived here in these housing? I see a few here, I see a few here, every single meeting. The only meeting I saw a real turnout is when myself, Len, and several other people, Luana, went out knocking on door to door. And they came out and they were angry. And I've been up and down in those buildings. I've gotten petitions signed. And those, there's people that don't know what is going on. There's people that are afraid. There's people that are misinformed. There's people that can barely move. They're not being protected.
Yes.
And if you want to really work with the community, which you are a community board, I'm asking you, get together with them, find a plan to protect them, okay? Goldstein has a wonderful project. You put a sleeve on it, you take care of some. put some
John,
huge
John,
category,
you're coming on.
And you take
John,
care of the building.
gotta wrap up, okay?
Okay. And the fog of war, you were right.
Last thought on that.
You're
yeah.
definitely right. And you're definitely, and we're all involved here, the community. And one more thing,
Last point,
last point, I swear.
find it, tell
It
us.
says a demolition project. I disagree with you, Joe. It's a demolition project. You can look at what they've done in the past, okay?
Yes.
They started in Chicago. They went to Liberty Square. They went to Far Rockaway. There's a crystal ball here. Look at it, okay? It'll tell you exactly what they're after. Okay, there's enough information. We've got plenty of information. I can give you a panel.
John, thank you. So we're gonna go on to Missy Adams. Missy Adams,
Hold on a minute.
Missy Adams,
Hold on 1 second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. It was too much clapping. And then bring Sanford over too, yep.
Bring them both.
Jess is on.
Try.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Hi, I'm Missy Adams. I live at 161 next to Razzo Fish, which is a stone's throw from Fulton Houses. And I just have to say, I just don't understand the race to privatize. I know they're trying to push this through before Adams gets out of office, but it really feels like the neighbors, the residents are being hoodwinked. And in its race to privatize, the city has given up on public programs. And it's the Republicans are running the city. Public housing is a good program. This is a good community. They're good buildings. They just need to be taken care of and maintained properly. It's the issue fundamentally is not about shadows or how people are going to move around. It is Section 8 versus Section 9. It is renovation versus demolition. Very simply. And renovation is cheaper. It will displace fewer people. It will keep the neighborhood intact. And I just don't understand why everyone is pushing to privatize and go to Section 8. Once you go there, you can never go back, and it will change the neighborhood. Luxury housing is a blight on a neighborhood. It raises the prices of everything, and that is why the city is unaffordable. Not because because they need more housing, they need more affordable housing. Stop building luxury housing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's gonna be the last. And that's our last speaker, Sanford.
Okay, hello everyone. I will also identify that I am a member of the board, although again, I'm just speaking in my individual capacity right now. I want to go back to some comments from the committee members a while ago. Katie made a comment that this is public land, and I think a lot of people have mentioned like this, it's public land. The related will make their developer fee, but they should not be like profiting in perpetuity on it. And I agree with that. And I think I agree with Katie's point that if we do infill development, I think the best thing to do would be to increase the percentage of affordable housing if there is excess profit to go around. That is the way to deal with that. And I think at 50%, there will not be that much excess profit to go around, but I think that's great because it's public land. We can ask for something like 50% and it can work economically. And that's a great thing. And then sort of continuing that, Roberta made a comment that we can manage we can sort of retain the bulk that allows us to potentially create a lot of affordable housing with that while still managing the height, but keeping the number of units pretty similar. And I think that's important. And I would say, again, there's sort of a addendum to all this. I do think like the most important thing is what the tenants think. So if the tenants are not, in favor of infill development, it's their home, like that is the important thing. But if there is tenant support for infill development on one campus or on both campuses, and there may well be because the infill development, you can use that money to fund like renovations or demolition and replacement of the existing buildings. And so there may well be a lot of support for that infill development from the tenants. If there is, I think this is a great opportunity to build the much needed affordable and even market rate housing that Chelsea very, very much does need. And this is a rare opportunity to do a lot of great infill development at once.
Point of information.
Thank you.
How about just
One
a question?
question. I would like to him to listen to himself and just.
That sounds like a comment.
That's
Point of information is okay, a point of information I would say, you cannot keep talking about buildings and developments. We are talking, the first point that Joe put there was the people, everybody's talking about people and you are highlighting development. So please, when you go back to the table.
I think there should be a vote, and I think the result of the vote should be respected. If the tenants vote for this, then I think we should go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so I just want to note, we had a very long meeting today, but except for one moment, we pretty much talked like human beings to each other.
Yes.
And we had a serious back and forth. I lost my shit with Clem, I apologize quickly, say things. Like I'm saying, but that's the point. We can do that, get to it's a passionate discussion, and then come back and still talk to each other. Katie, thank you for being a lawyer a couple times tonight, because it's very helpful. When you in this cloud of information, it's hard to sometimes sift through things. All right. To the public here, you came. There are more people. It's long, got kind of warm, whatever. I hope that you understand that we're trying to figure out now. No, I'm not doing that part.
I was trying to find.
I'm trying to figure out a way that we're gonna start talking about positive moving forward and what is our strategy to build consensus around. So I want to note for anyone who said, like, Renee said, forget about these community facilities, I don't care about them. It's one thing that I think we can actually get some consensus on. That people think, actually, we should have a Hudson Guild and. Well, yeah, well, but I can tell you, probably, right, but probably it's not gonna get built here. So I'm always trying to get but the point of it is to try to get us back in the same boat. Tenants, neighbors, block associations, community organizations, all of our committee members, because we have been deliberately divided by a very poor public process.
Yeah.
But never forget that. So let's put as much as we can that aside, figure out a way, some common ground. Without the common ground, we never get to get a response that can actually be listened to respectfully.
Residents, if people that are gonna represent us, like June 9th,
July 9th.
You know, we're not gonna accept your line, and we're gonna cut you off right there, that's what riled us up. Cause I'm not gonna let you speak on a lie. But
Exactly.
the tenant,
Exactly.
no,
So,
what the hell
right,
is going
so what I
on?
wanna know here, just to say
Come
this,
to my home, why none of you haven't come?
right, and Jackie, and by the way, this is a great pause, because this committee has asked, and I'm gonna put it out to the tenants here. We would like to, in the month of July, to set up a tour of people's homes in Chelsea Nitro. Because I think it is dead important for our committee here, for our board members to realize that what is being talked about is not what exists.
Right.
So I would hope, I put that out to you guys to come back to us. We're inviting ourselves to your homes, basically.
Well,
All right, and what we want to do is we want to do this because we need to open eyes to understand it's a broad range of things that happens here, not just apartments in terrible shape. But on July 9th, I want to close on this, July 9th. We are setting absolute ground rules for people, how they're reporting themselves, how they're reacting. We know full well there's going to be emotion, people upset and stuff. But we will not, as a community board, conduct any meeting in the way the town hall happened with Assemblymember Simone and Congressmember Nava. That's not who we are as a community.
I know, I mean.
Everyone's in between respect.
We're talking about the elected, Jackie.
I know something.
So they're allowed to lie?
No, listen, no.
We're gonna go to people who are raising their hand, and we need to wrap up soon. It is 9:30 and I need to get home. Tweet.
One of the reasons why people might be emotional at the July 9 meeting is because they are misinformed. And to Lizette Malone's point is that there needs to be systematic information dispersed before July 9th. That's a suggestion I have.
Can I say one thing?
No, I am going to people who are raising their hand. We are not calling out. John, and I'm putting a timer on because we need to wrap up.
30 seconds or something.
No,
I just have,
we are leaving in 10 minutes. John,
I have two questions.
you need to be brief.
Sure. Number one is, do you realize why that meeting happened the way it did?
Yes.
Of course, not even a question. No, of course.
Can you? let us-
No, we understand it.
Discussion right now.
Yeah, it's actually, the bottom line is, we're not conducting our meetings that way, period.
Okay.
We understand that. I so hope.
Can you stand up, people? I've been attending, Chris Banks, he's the chairman of the City Council Public Housing Committee. And NYCHA's been testifying, and what they're testifying.
Can you come up?
And what they have
I
been
realize I'm
testifying
already
to is that they are warehousing 10,000 units. And a large proportion of those are in preparation for RADPAC. You know, there's a waiting list for public housing, and yet they're warehousing 10,000 units. They also told us that they are warehousing a few thousand units because of lead paint abatement. Do you know the amount of time lead paint abatement has been taking in a NYCHA apartment? 384 days. Okay, you know how long lead paint abatement should take?
About 5 days.
Yes, okay.
Does anybody else
Okay,
raise?
now, what I want to do is bring it back to the committee for a second here, folks. We had a long discussion, and I recognize Roberta about a motion about how we're proceeding ahead.
So I moved to memorialize these comments made this evening related to the community position as a draft that could be provided to other committees and the full board for discussion purposes. So it would be based on, just for information, the points for discussion as were distributed this evening, but with the added points that members of the committee and members of the community have made here this evening.
Roberta has been taking notes. We have the video too, so we'll draft it up so it gets revised.
like to, just, make one point of clarification. As pointed out by Renee, the most important thing are the residents' concerns. And I think, Joe, you said at the beginning, you went with the easiest things
We can
first.
reorder it, yeah.
And so we need to make sure to reorder it so that the main points that we're making are about resident concerns and then the
Yeah,
other.
and by the way, I want to acknowledge, I did that just for ease of discussion, not
That's why
order of
I just said that.
Right.
I just said that, that's why you did it that way.
That's right, that's right.
So that's a second.
Yes, you got a second and then on this
Yeah,
motion.
I'm sorry, so point of clarification, so, sorry, so we're listing out what was submitted to us in writing. and-
Revising the document,
And then
and sending that in our normal committee process.
okay, and then we're also saying, and then these are all of the concerns that were raised at our meeting by tenants?
No,
No, we're gonna integrate them.
integrate.
Basically, it's all the points made, many people here, what's on the sheet, but I only clarified that we're starting with resident concerns first.
In the revision.
Opposite of our discussion started with community facilities.
We took the easy
That was
stuff
the
first.
easy stuff first. That was the only thing I was clarifying, starting with resident concerns first.
This is a draft being sent to the committee.
Yes, yes. It's first our committee first to do the normal, send it out, give comments back, and then
That would be great.
it'll be visible, just like we did with the charter thing, to the full.
Okay.
Same thing, yeah.
Can I just make a point of remembering that Blue meets literally 2 days before the full board in July. So if we're looking for a vote on this in July, then Blue's meets like, that's the same week Blue's meeting. So if we want full committees to actually review all this, that might be difficult for Blue to do.
Why don't we take that vote back to the chairs, figure out if there's a possibility. I don't know if there is.
I mean.
It may be September, yeah, maybe September.
Okay, motion, and second.
The motion is on the floor, it's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed to the motion? Online, JD and Rachel? In favor? So it's
In
unanimous.
favor.
The whole, what? I'm
There's
sorry.
no opposed, there's no P&E.
Anyone opposed? All in favor, we heard? Anyone opposed? Present not eligible? Anyone abstaining? It passes unanimously. Thank you all incredibly for this, and thank you all for the. I
do understand.